out a little bit and consider your own perceptions about the current levels of public trust in the NPA. What are those perceptions?
It is concerningly low if you read what is there. And perhaps it's also because of the past, the NPA didn't communicate fully the excellent work that we're doing. I've picked that up in my interactions with community. We invite students to do job shadowing at my office, where I regularly interact with them. And often, early in discussion, I would ask, come and work for the NPA. We do this, we do that. And they're like, why would we be doing that? But once you unpack the services that we provide, the skills there are in the NPA, what an honor it is to serve, and what a noble profession it is, and the good work that we do. Beyond on just working in those court hours, but working with communities, doing outreach, perceptions change immediately, and there's trust that they see that we're human beings, we work very hard, and that we are a caring NPA. So also communicating what it is that we do and why it is important and why certain reasons. It will and provide detailed reasons, accurate, and also not because of technology. It must happen almost as soon as there's an incident. We must be ready to communicate on that.
And maybe whilst we're talking about that, beyond communication, what else would you do to enhance the levels of public trust in the NPA?
Performance is key. Minister has pointed out sexual offences, the lag that there was in the Western Cape for quite some time, that it has improved. If you don't show results, you won't be trusted. You can bring a good news story, but you need to prove swift results where people feel it, to instill confidence.
No, I think that's helpful. The other thing you talked about is accountability as part of the narrative on trust. What would you do if you had to be appointed as the NDPP? What would you do to enhance the accountability of the NPA as an institution?
Accountability starts with good leadership, making sure that there are systems in place, that it's properly monitored, that there is, where there are transgressions, that it's executed upon quickly, but also lifting your staff morale, knowing that you would support them, that decisions have to be good decisions, and that we have to account for what it is that we're doing. And if you're not pulling your weight, that there will be consequences. So it's dealing with consequence management as well.
One of the criticisms, especially from civil society, of the NPA is how you deal with performance and accountability, transparency and accountability for performance. I'm not sure if you're aware of the criticism, especially around how you look at the statistics and how you communicate on that. What are your thoughts about that criticism, and is there something you would change?
For me, it is public education is also important. How we manage our stats as well. Stats and performance is important, but more importantly is that we are reaching the victims. We are not just statistics driven. We are about that your voice is heard, that you're treated with dignity and respect. We are not putting on the cases purely on the court roll because we will have a positive outcome. We make sure that there's reasonable prospects of success as well. And sometimes that is an acquittal. That is how the system works. But we need to be able to explain to community why there has been an acquittal.
Okay, no, thank you. One of the things around accountability, and especially around performance and perhaps other matters, is about being clear on to whom you account and when. Could you maybe share your thoughts on whom the accountability partners would be and how you would engage with them?
The balance between accountability, protecting privacy, and the integrity of a case, it's a very fine balance. And I think as prosecutors, we rather shy away from saying too much, and that might cause concerns about that we're not truly, or we're seen as to be not truly accountable. The NDPP was recently confronted before the commission when she didn't want to give details about a particular person. That is that balance of being accountable and protecting the integrity of the investigation as well. But we must be mindful of where our accountability lies. As I've said several times now, it lies with Parliament as well as with the public, that we are able to explain our decisions.
Thank you very much. Let's move to Mr. Mvundlela.
Thanks, Minister. I think to a large extent I'm covered. I wanted to just understand from you, Advocate Bell, that currently there's been an outcry, and I would call it an outcry in South Africa, that we have seen commissions comes and goes and all those, and people have been wondering to what extent is the NPA actually then taking these matters forward, and we have not seen, at least to a greater degree, perhaps the NPA from the head office point, and that's where you aspire to go, I believe. That's why you're sitting here with us. So how do you see yourself improving that environment, if at all? Perhaps it may have been discussed among senior management, as you have answered my colleague, the AG.
Yes, there has been a lot of commissions, commission on state capture, corruption, and the NPA. What is the NPA going to do? I believe that my view is that the Zondo Commission, as well as the NACAC, the National Advisory Commission on Corruption, has laid the basis for what must be done to tackle corruption in the country decisively. The NPA now has the IDEC. The IDEC was established only last year. They now have the digital tools. They're trying to attract more skills, as I said, more investment to insulate them, to be able to prosecute. But the NPA cannot do it alone. There will have to be reform as to how corruption is decisively addressed in the country. Certain law enforcement agencies as competing mandates, how that is being addressed. So the NACAC's recommendations is key to implementing corruption, and all the stakeholders working together and even consolidating some of the mandates that there is. How the NPA will work is and we've seen it, asset forfeiture must be at the front of everything that we do, and we do it with urgency. Whether it's in your organized crime space, whether it's in your corruption space as well. And also having dedicated courts to hear these matters. In the Western Cape, we only have one commercial court. We've recently established a footprint in the Southern Cape. That court, those cases by nature takes long, and it causes a huge backlog. So there has to be dedicated courts where these matters will be heard. So it's the NPA, yes, leading but everybody else must give support in us getting a case, because and what community often forget, these recommendations from the commissions are but recommendations. It has to be investigated. It has to be credible, admissible evidence before court, before we can take it to court. And the pockets of these suspects are usually deep. They come up with Stalingrad tactics where we need to change. That's why I talked about agility and flexibility. We need to be on top of it. Change our prosecution plan. Have the best of the best. The IDEC should be the center of excellence in the NPA. And that would be where I would drive. Making the IDEC fully insulated, independent, and operational, as well as all the other forums where corruption matters are heard. There must be a clear plan how we're going to deal with those matters. And we must have, and there's the skills enhancement, the training has now commenced for our prosecutors to deal with cybercrime, money laundering, having the necessary technology available. We must be able to keep pace with the modern challenges that crime, especially commercial crime, has confronted us with.
Thanks. Given the big institution the NPA is, you now sit at the top and you have all this hierarchical flow of the institution itself. You are currently the head in the Western Cape. There is the head in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and all over the places. How do you see yourself making sure that there is some kind of a uniform way of working throughout all these hierarchical layers of the NPA, because it can easily create a conflicting
That is why
environment.
the prosecution policy of the NPA is key. It creates a standard of how prosecution decisions are made. That is where you have that standard, the norm. If you are arrested for drunken driving in the Western Cape, the same processes must be followed in Gauteng as well, where we have a standard. If there's a zero tolerance towards withdrawing a domestic violence cases, it must be replicated across the country.
Thank you. Thanks, Minister.
Okay. Let's move to, I'm managing time now. Advocate Sipanya Mohale, your turn.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
Your follow-up, you can wait and then we deal with your follow-up.
Okay. I was just going to say, as you're saying that uniformity, setting norms and standards, I would finish it off by saying, despite all that, or however, we still see poor performance. What would you do if you were to come in to deal with those, with the challenges around poor performance?
I would look at specifically where those poor performances are. Whether it's at a certain office, like we did with essential infrastructure. Why is that court not performing, but Weinberg is carrying the province in reaching it? What is happening there is, and we always start with ourselves. Is it the service that we deliver? Do we need to speak to SEPS and the other law enforcement agencies and have a clear plan there? It's about prioritizing the priority. Having focused, dedicated areas. We can't prioritize everything. And that's why the prosecution priority strategy of the MPA is important. In the Western Cape, murders are rife. We're struggling with sexual offences. Firearms is a problem. In Gauteng, mining, zamazamas, that is a problem. That is how you address it. And that is how you're being responsive to the crime in the area so that that community that we serve there feels safer.
Advocate Nissan, Do you still have questions from your side? Thank you. Mr. Mutlo?
Thank you, Chair. Advocate Bell, now in response to challenges that you are facing in your division, there is a specialized court that you established in Khayelitsha. Did you
The
establish?
priority court.
Yes.
It worked wonders, but it had certain challenges. That court is no longer operational. The priority court initially started off as a drug court. The scourge of drugs was very high. Then it evolved to a court dealing with organized crime matters in the regional court. It was the same magistrate dealing with the same criminals. I am advocating, and I'm so glad you're asking that. So I'm hoping that my counterparts in the province will hear that we can replicate that in the bigger centers. I've spoken about the 12 stations that serves those courts, that we have a priority court at each of those centers to deal with the priorities of the community of that court services.
But you're saying there were challenges that led to that court
The
discontinuing.
challenges is that the same presiding officer, if I appeared in front of him today, I'm arrested for drugs, I appear before him because it's a gang case. Tomorrow I'm arrested again, I appear again before you. So it's best to replicate it so that he doesn't know all the criminals in the organized crime area. And it's unrealistic to expect one court just to be dealing with all the organized crime in that division. We needed to spread that, and it's also, there were safety concerns attached to that. But it yielded excellent results.
But those concerns and challenges that you faced, didn't you foresee those challenges before you established that court?
It evolved. As I said, it started off as a drug court. It did brilliantly, and slowly it morphed into an organized crime, a court that basically just dealt with organized crime matters. I've had discussions with the regional court president to try and see, and she has made suggestions where we've placed cases elsewhere to try and address that. And when she looked at the establishment, she was fairly new in the province, that court wasn't an established court on the establishment of the division. It was a gentleman's handshake, and it worked well for everybody. But that is why it's important that systems not be dependent on who the leaders are at the current time, but that there are clear protocols in place for good practices like that to sustain.
Prof. Fiken.
Thank you very much. You took us through your almost 3 decades of career in the public service and also within the NPA. How would you characterize the institutional culture over that period of the organization itself? With all the changes that have been taking place?
There was the era of the dawn of democracy. And maybe and it's not just because I was young and hopeful, but we were all excited and proud to be prosecutors, and we still are. I'm wearing my badge proudly. So on the lower levels of prosecution, nothing has changed. Yes, the morale is low. There's concerns about safety, and let me not say it, about salary, it has improved. So that morale is good. But as you move up higher, and we've seen at the previous interviews, there were concerns about the independency of the MP8. But there is a culture of working hard, of being committed. And I really want to pay homage to those prosecutors that work hard on a daily basis in very difficult circumstances. And that is where the face of justice is. It's not at national office. It's when you go into any magistrate's court, the prosecutors that serves you there, whether you receive justice. So there's a culture of working hard and dedication. There's some areas where you're correct, where there are concerns, and that needs to be addressed by principled leadership, accountability, and consequence management.
If you were the leader of the organization, how would you instill that ethical conduct across the organization in repositioning the organization?
The fact that we have the accountability structure of the Office of Ethics and Accountability is already assisting. I've looked at the stats that has been given. People are complaining, they're trusting the system as well, that their complaints will be addressed. It is also to show staff that this is our principles. We are the people's lawyer. Being the people's lawyer means serving with integrity, serving the people, and sometimes serving the people is even serving the accused, because we are officers of the court. By instilling that, and where that culture, that ethics is not followed, that there be reminders, that everybody knows what the strategy is, what we're working towards, and if there's transgressions, that there's swift consequence management, and that there's reporting about those transgressions and how we've acted upon it. We need to build a more resilient prosecution team, is one that trusts management, they trust the direction that we are going in.
In all those years, as a follow-up, have there been any divisions within the NPA that you have observed?
Divisions as to disagreement.
Not just disagreements where you deliberate, but where you say now there are divisions because there are blocks which take different positions at different moments.
There are robust discussions in the MPA where we feel, are we ready to move in their directions? And that's why I say I am consultative. I rather hear the robust discussion from you. I am concerned about the ones that are quiet. Why are we not hearing from you? Are you following our direction? Are you being ethical and accountable?
Maybe let me follow up again. Have you observed during that period divisions, not robust engagements, which are rather professional, where you say during this period, I think I can observe disagreements within the organization? Or you have not witnessed any of that?
There has been at times when certain policy decisions or discretions from prosecutors have been taken away, that there has been disagreement. Where prosecutors question certain decisions. Disagreement on, for instance, and an explanation about how the TRC cases were managed. Previously, the TRC cases were managed in a dedicated capacity within national office. But since the NDPPs are coming to office, that was given to the regions, and it's been actioned and it's been worked upon. So yes, it was being questioned, and I'm sure that there was disagreement as well, and it's important work that the MPA is now accelerating upon.
Maybe as I conclude, there's just one thing that I can't leave without asking. You spoke about the issue of ethics and public trust, but also the perception. I listened quite interestingly. Now, you're saying that since the Office of Ethics and Accountability has been there are complaints that are going there, and therefore they're being dealt with. but also we all know there's code of conduct of NPA
yes.
that has been there. And do you think those are sufficient to deal with, for example, allegations and public assumptions or public perception that some of the prosecutors are corrupt?
And that is why the hearing, the concerns, and it's we don't know who is making that complaint. There's an anonymity in the complaints. It helps in addressing those concerns where there is, and I, even under the regulations, where I hear of allegations, I can now refer it to that unit to investigate that.
Okay, last point on that one. Do you think that all public prosecutors should go through lifestyle audit?
Definitely, Minister. And somebody told me that don't forget to say about the vetting and the lifestyle audits. That is key. That is where you will see the red flags, Minister. So we fully support that should be happening.
Let me hand over to Ms. Maluleka to take us through your public comments. It's your last segment.
Thank you.
Of your questions. I can see you are relieved.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Advocate Bell, you'd be delighted to know, as you've seen, that the 9 comments you received from the public were generally in support of your candidacy. So there's not much to engage with because you've seen them and you've also had opportunity to reflect on them. I will use the time just to check on something with you. You talked earlier on about your triumph in having the dismissal of the case against Bongo reversed, right? Sometimes we try to learn from our losses and we neglect to learn from our wins. In an era where we are facing many more cases relating to corruption, many more cases that are sensitive and high profile, what have you learned from that particular case that you might want to bring forward in preparing for the future?
What I've learned from that case is prosecution must have a plan. We must present the court with all the evidence. So if we, and the courts must know, the educators, that we will challenge the outcomes if we are not happy. We've learned from that because previously, and it's very stringent procedure to follow to challenge a case. But it shows that, and it instills confidence that we're all equal before the law. It doesn't matter what the profile of the accused is, we will follow the letter of the law. We will take the matter on appeal. It doesn't necessarily, we're not influenced by who the presiding judge is. The issue is for us is addressing corruption and addressing it at all levels and instilling confidence that we will deal with corruption. We will not be defined by corruption in the country. It is unacceptable. It influences negatively the growth and the potential of our country, and it steals others of opportunities, especially the youth in our country with a high unemployment rate.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to announce, Advocate Bell, that we've come to the end of your session, interaction with us, and thank you very much for availing yourself for this process and also for the work that you continue to do.
I just want to thank the panel for the opportunity. I am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. they will assist you, should you be appointed as an NDPP?
Certainly, Minister. Of course, like most law graduates, I did a BA with legal theory as one of my majors. My second major was economic history. Of course, the BA degree lays a very good foundation for individuals who want to proceed to the LLB. Thereafter, I did the LLB, the Bachelor of Laws, dealing with the full spectrum of courses required. And that is obviously the pathway into the legal profession. And so that served me well in terms of getting into law as a practice. You would notice, Minister, that I have international studies as part of my studies. Just to explain that, I always thought if for whatever reason the law didn't satisfy me, I would want to go into the diplomatic corps and serve South Africa in the diplomatic corps. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to do the postgraduate diploma and thereafter the MA in international studies. And although not relevant to law, it does, in my view, build the candidature that I present. One has to conduct research in doing that. It's different to law, it's a different field. And it broadens one's horizon, and it certainly contributed to my development. Fortunately, I haven't had to use my international studies. The law as to date has satisfied me, and so I'm still committed to the law. Maybe, Minister, just to alert you to you notice that I had 2 degrees in 1 year, and I'm sure that would have intrigued the panel. Just to explain, and not many people know this about me, in my final year law, I failed 2 subjects. And I thank the Lord for that. It's an unusual statement to make.
I was about to say, that's quite interesting.
I thank the Lord for that, because the next year, a lady came into my life. And she's been with me for 35 years. Yesterday, we were married for 30 years, and I couldn't be with her. Fortunately, she understood my commitment to the country, my dedication, and my desire to serve. And so she agreed for me to delay my departure. So my wife and my son has departed on our vacation. We had planned to celebrate our anniversary, and I will join them tomorrow.
So I did share with the panel that we had to adjust your scheduled date of interviews so that you can be able to talk.
So I really
thought
wish
it was
to
still coming, the anniversary.
I wish to
happy anniversary.
thank you for that, Minister. And then after international studies, I started working. Whilst employed, I had the desire to still advance myself and continue my studies. And so you'll notice that I did two master's degrees. The first one in criminal justice and criminology, once again, gave me a very, very broad range of skills. The focus on criminology in particular gives one an understanding of the environment one operates in, the criminal mind to an extent, and it really served me well, and it serves me well in the discipline of law. My thesis for that particular master's degree, I did it on correctional supervision as a sentencing option, and I did my research at the Cape Town Corrections Office. The MPhil, everyone always asks me why an MPhil. To be honest with you, I didn't want to have a second LLM, and so I chose to do the Master of Philosophy in Law, and there I did my thesis on the asset forfeiture provisions and doing a comparison with the United States in terms of what we have available in South Africa. And I was fortunate enough to have someone who had assisted the asset forfeiture unit in South Africa with the development of our processes to act as a reference point. And so I did that. I'm not going to specify the MA International Studies, Minister, unless you wish me to say what the thesis was on. Maybe I should say what it was. I did my research on the African National Congress as a non-state actor at the United Nations, covering a broad period from the 1960s up until just before the dawn of democracy. In that period, and I try to draw on the experiences of non-state actors at the United Nations and the role that the ANC played in that regard. That was my thesis for the MA International Studies. So, Minister, coming back to your initial question, I think all of those qualifications have contributed to the person that I am, to the candidate that I present. And so, yes, in each in its own way is a constituent part of who I am. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. With that, moving on, looking from the qualification, because we're trying to ensure that we get to know you as the panel, but also the public gets to know you as well.
Certainly.
Your experience as a prosecutor. I'm noticing that you started as a public prosecutor, both in Kimberley and Makhanda, from 1992 until 95, becoming a state advocate under the Office of the Attorney General, Western Cape, 95 to 1998, senior state advocate, Office of the Attorney General, Western Cape, 98 to 1998 as well. So it's July until October. And then you became, as NPA was established, became senior state advocate in the ID Investigating Directorate, Organized Crime and Public Safety in 1998 to 2001. Deputy Director of Public Prosecution Asset Forfeiture, 2001 to 2003. Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Directorate of Special Operations, 2003 to April to October. Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, Directorate of Special Operations. The other one was regional, this one head office. November 2003 to March 2004. Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, Regional Head, Directorate of Special Operations, 2004 to 2009. Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, Western Cape, from 2009 to date. So your experience in terms of prosecution is vast. But tell us, how many people have you been managing in these areas? I'm looking at the others, looks quite junior. But as you go in terms of being the senior deputy and others, how many have you been managing people?
So the highlight, Minister, for me in terms of that managerial experience, in terms of numbers and volume, was when I was the head of the DSO, the Scorpions. And there, our staff complement in the Western Cape were 101. And it comprised of different disciplines. Obviously, there were prosecutors, because that was a main component, investigators, junior and senior investigators, analysts, crime analysts. We had a crime analysis division. And so we had junior and senior analysts, and of course the traditional administration that supported the work that we did within the DSO. When the DSO was dissolved, the prosecutors that were part of the DSO were integrated into the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And so my role changed fundamentally. So from having been responsible for 101 people, all of a sudden I was responsible for 5, 6 people, 7 people, 8 people here. So the role of the deputy director is different from the regional head minister, and it's a strange construct because you are a manager, but you're also a lawyer. So it's a unique role. It's not a manager in the typical sense of the public administration. Of if you're at a particular level, if you were a deputy director, you will have X number of people below you, director. It's different, and even describing being in charge of the people, it's a bit of a misnomer, because you may have someone reporting to you for performance information purposes, for performance reporting, but you may see only a sample of their work because of the checking system. The checking system is one where when files come into the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, normally 2 people are assigned to it, a junior and a senior. And so even though there are seniors who report to me, I might not even see that file. It's just the way the system is structured. And so I always try and illustrate the point that the fact that you don't have a large number of people reporting to you doesn't diminish from the role that you play. Because firstly, the role of the deputy, in law, you have the same power as the DPP. Obviously, the DPP is the head of the office and gives guidance. But your role is a critical one, supporting the activities of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And that role does not require or necessitate you to be responsible for large numbers of people. Because when we try and set up what we do as an organization, you don't direct the 6 or 7 people that are that report to you. You direct the operations across the board within the organization. And so the fact that I've, in the recent past, only managed a lesser number of people, I say with respect, doesn't detract from my candidature. Huh?
Currently, how many do you manage?
It's about 7 as well, Minister. Senior state advocates predominantly, 1 senior public prosecutor, who's placed in the DPP office for a particular purpose. It's not usual to have a senior public prosecutor in the office of the DPP or the Director of Public Prosecutions. This individual has been appointed to deal with the Community Prosecutions Initiative. And because it is still novel in the organization, in consultation with the DPP, we decided to keep the person at the DPP office working under my supervision until the initiative matures, until we form a particular view on how to expand the initiative or reconsider our position on the initiative itself, depending on the practicalities.
I got intrigued by where you reflect that you are a member of the National Joint Task Team that was overseeing the aspects of transition to a new structure from the DSO. Do you want to share that with us?
Yes, certainly, Minister.
And I'll say this in context that NPA is evolving over time with the introduction of IDEC and all this. So there's transitions that are happening. So if you can share with us.
Yes, certainly. And sometimes it feels like a bit of deja vu when I see the IDEC coming back into being. Certainly, Minister. Look, that the decision to dissolve the DSO, and I say this in the questionnaire, was quite an emotionally charged one for many members of the organization. And I think I was fortunate to be part of that process. So our leader, the NPA had a leader of delegation, as well as team members. I was a team member, and Advocate Willie Afmeyer, or Mr. Willie Afmeyer, he always reminds us he was always missed because he was an attorney. He was our leader. For the police, General Inchue was their leader, and together with various members. And essentially what we tried to do was to try and envision as the collective what we thought the new structure should be. It was clear we had made peace with the fact that the DSO was no longer to be, and the idea was to try and ensure that how do we dissolve one institution, one structure, create something new, but not lose anything in the process. So that when the new organization sets in or kicks in, it's a seamless transition. Obviously, we were concerned that some investigations were still pending, and so we tried to manage that. A key part of that process was the change management. In particular, what would happen to investigators. As I said earlier, as the lawyers, not much changed. A lot changed, but not much changed, if you understand what I mean, Minister. For example, my office didn't change. I remained in my office. The simple things like that didn't change. But for the investigators, for some of them it was a daunting task, because the DSO, panel members will recall, was comprised of senior investigators who had spent a lot of their career in the police and had been brought in for their expertise. But we also tried something different. We brought in university graduates, mostly black, skilled, excited, wanting to contribute to the safety and security of our people, and they were confronted with this dilemma, but going to the police. Because for many, it's inconceivable for them to have wanted to be in the police. The DSO represented something different, something aspirational, and they did not see themselves in the police. Some of the senior police officers as well, or former police officers, they themselves had concerns about going back to the police. Because you'll recall, Minister, there had been some tensions between the police and the DSO, and many of them were fearful that going back into the police environment, they would be victimized. So these were the kinds of concerns that we had to try and address, sought assurances from the police that wouldn't happen. And eventually, I think with some success, we were able to manage the transition. Of course, we, as the DSO representatives, we were negotiating. Truth be told, we were negotiating on the back foot because we were the ones closing down and the police were taking over the DPCI. But we tried to bring some of our thoughts, our suggestions, and it was for them to accept. All we could do was we could offer the advice, reflect on our own experiences, and share with them what we thought should happen in the new structure. But ultimately, it was there. So, and as I say in the question there, it was a taxing time, Minister, traveling through the country, confronting people, looking them in the eye, and trying to give them assurance. And I think the key thing there was we were honest with our people. When I say our people, are the DSO members, because we couldn't give them some of the assurances that they wanted. Because as soon as the one door closed and the other opened, we had no control. So we gave some honest reflection, and ultimately it was for individuals to decide to join the new structure. Many chose to go, and I'm proud to say, Minister, some of the very best in the DPCI in the Western Cape now came from the ranks of the DSO, and I'm not diminishing the contribution of other members. I'm merely reflecting on. Fortunately, there were some of the good people who remained, who stayed true to the cause, wanted to work, wanted to make a change, and they decided, despite all of their concerns and the fears that they had at an individual level, they continued with the journey, they joined the DPCI, and many of them are making a tremendous contribution to the safety and security of our people.
Thank you very much. And moving on your leadership style or management style, you describe it as a style that is inclusive and consultative, grounded in the belief that people deliver their best work when they are meaningfully engaged. I found it quite interesting because I think that's what Advocate Bell as well said. Maybe share with us. So
Minister, mine is grounded in my background, and I won't go all the way back to school where I served as deputy head boy. But at university, I was fortunate enough to form part of organizations where the culture was one of engagement, reflection, striving for the best, and that has remained with me. It's also my nature. I am never one to pontificate. I am never one to assert a title. I always try and use influence. And so from those formative years as individuals at university, in various structures that I served in, that's been the culture, and that's been my culture. And it's innate. And sometimes I'll sit in a meeting and I'll observe someone, and I can immediately tell that that person doesn't share the background that I share because of the manner in which the person is conducting him or herself. Doesn't have that sense of how you engage with a group of people, how you try and build consensus firstly, ensure that people's views are respected, because that's empowering. If you create a platform where people feel that their views are heard, respected and valued, that's empowering. And often you find that some of the best ideas come from individuals. And so if you shut down dialogue, if you close that door, how are you going to do all the best amongst us? And it's part of my style. It's what I've always done. It represents who I am, and so I don't turn it on and turn it off. It's there. It's a permanent feature of my being.
So of the 33 years as a prosecutor, 24 years have been in management.
In management, that's correct, Minister.
Correct, okay. Now we move forward into the next segment of that, and we deal with the issues around that. If I can confirm that you do not have you've not been taken to a DC, nor are you currently facing any inquiry or investigation by the Office of Ethics and Accountability?
Not at all, Minister.
Not at all. But you have been reported. There's been a complaint. Take us through previously.
That's correct, Minister. So as you read from my background, Minister, I was the head of the DSO, and the DSO as I said earlier, was dissolved in 2009. And so we transitioned into the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. At the time, the DPP was Advocate de Kock. So in 2013, I received a letter from the chairperson of the disciplinary committee, the Bar Council, alerting me to this particular complaint. So firstly, obviously surprised, read through the complaint. I noticed that it reflected incidents that happened in 2005, 2006. So obviously I immediately presented this to Advocate de Kock. And I then went about preparing a response to him. So just for the benefit of the panel, what had transpired is a member of the public had complained to the Bar Council asking for me to be investigated. And the allegation was the complainant felt that I had not dealt with a complaint that she had made against a member of the DSO. She felt that I hadn't dealt with it with the necessary, as I should have, that I was dismissive. And the essence really turned around how I dealt with it, and she felt that firstly I didn't do enough in her view, and she felt I should be censured by the Bar Council for that. And so I wrote a very detailed note to Advocate de Kock explaining exactly what had transpired and what had happened, dear Minister. And of course I've refreshed my memory from the historical documents as well. I recall receiving a letter from the head of the DSO at the time was Advocate Linda McCarthy, and the letter to me was basically an instruction to me to ensure that the letter, together with the complaint form, and the complaint form was a pro forma form which forms part of the NPA policy, that the complaint form be served on the complainant, and that the complainant be requested to transmit the complaint to head office. And so I arranged with one of the senior investigators, Mr. Haywood. I see Mr. Haywood's signature was on the document. Mr. Haywood then went and served the document on the complainant. So that would have been in January 2006. We heard nothing from the complainant. And then in February of that same year, I saw an article in the Son. I must say I don't read the Son much, but I still read the Voice. The local tabloids gives you a sense of what's happening on the Cape Flats, and so it's a good source to get a temperature gauge of what's happening. And I was surprised when I saw the story, and I recognized the name of the journalist. And then I reached out to the journalist and asked her to facilitate a meeting. And unfortunately, the journalist is late now, Ms. Mendes. She did that. She arranged a meeting. The complainant, together with the mother, and Ms. Mendes came. And my thinking there, Minister, was, so our initial approach didn't work. We sent out the questionnaire and there was no response. Clearly, the complainant had built up a rapport with the journalist. They'd been able to share her experience with the journalist, and I thought that would be a gateway. And the request was for the journalist to facilitate obtaining the form so that the form could be dispatched to VGM. In terms of the policy, Minister, I had no role, and in fact the policy was quite clear. The letter said to me, serve the document on the complainant, and as the supervisor, you're not to be involved in the matter. And so my role was not involving myself in the matter. My role was facilitation to try and ensure that the complainant filled in the form so that the process could unfold. Nothing happened so far as the journalist was concerned. I sent a follow-up email. Nothing came from the journalist. Thereafter, I recall that it was maybe I shouldn't mention the name, but the public representative at the Office of the Public Protector had written to me. And the complainant had written to his office to complain about the service delivery aspect of what she described as an investigation. And I thought, here's another opportunity now. In my own mind, I thought the complainant clearly is not engaging with us. My own endeavors to engage with her, to build a rapport and to unlock, clearly hadn't worked. And so I requested the Office of the Public Protector to facilitate that, for them to engage with the complainant, get her to fill in the form, and then for them to transmit it to the DSO head office. Unfortunately, that also did not yield any results. And so that was the end of it until I received the complaint in 2013, some 7 years later. Of course, Advocate de Kock had considered my explanation. He wrote to the Bar Council saying he found that there was nothing in my conduct that warranted disciplinary action, and communicated same to the Bar Council. The Bar Council, I know, wrote back to the complainant, basically saying they're not doing anything, and I'm paraphrasing now, Minister, and that was the end of it.
Yes. No, thank you very much. We did receive the attached documents and the letters that relates to the matter. Going through again to the next segment is your contribution as per the questionnaire that speaks to your role in the work that you do, contribution in terms of law, but also in terms of access to justice or justice in pursuit of justice in South Africa. Any project, I see you've got quite a number of them that are written under your work as a leader,
Yeah.
Anyone can pick anyone specific just to share. As I said, we're getting to know you.
Yes,
to
Minister.
understand your leadership style, to understand your management style.
Could I go to the one on page 19, Project Mir, Minister? And in the bigger scheme of things, it was not a national story. It wasn't as big as LeisureNet. It wasn't as big as Fidentia. But when I was approached to consider authorizing the investigation, what struck me was here is a small municipality, a limited budget, and yet the officials there, political office bearers and officials, are dipping into money that could serve a community. And so it's not a typical DSO case. It's probably considered low value if one has regard to the value. But in my own mind, Minister, I thought if we are able to effect change and to demonstrate to that community that it is not acceptable for officials and office bearers to have access to the money, it would send a powerful message. At the time, Minister, I say this in the questionnaire, I was responsible for the Northern Cape and the Western Cape as the head of the DSO. And so we did several investigations in the Northern Cape. And so that to me was a significant matter. As I say, not necessarily front page news. It may have made the Diamond Fields Advertiser in the Northern Cape. But I felt that the contribution and the impact we could make in such a small community would instill confidence in our people that law enforcement, that as the state, we care for them, and that we share their concerns, and to demonstrate that people must be held accountable. James as well. Maybe I can talk about James, Minister. And James. Of course, there was a lead advocate. I played a supporting role. I was involved in some of the negotiations. But there again, we were able to, as part of the process, to ensure that workers, maybe just for context, so the union and the union leadership were channeling their members to a particular company to take out loans. And of course, the interest rate was exorbitant. And the allegations were that there were kickbacks. So, in our discussions with the company, eventually when they settled on, firstly, made peace with the fact that they were going to admit guilt, we were able to ensure that 60 million rand went back to workers. And because we had records, as part of the investigation, we had uncovered the records. So they knew, for example, Mr. ACM had received a loan of X amount. We were able to calculate the interest that the individual had paid, and we were able then to work out that Mr. ACM would get back, say, 20,000 rand. But cumulatively, it amounted to 60 million rand that was returned to working people. And so there again, a case where we were able to demonstrate that we are able to affect the lives of ordinary people, not just the big names. Of course, the big names are important, and the fidentia is important. Fidentia, Minister, was finalized or concluded after the DSO was dissolved. And so J. Arthur Brown was eventually sentenced on appeal from the state to the SCA. But that had happened afterwards. But a lot of the initial work we had done as well, and you'll recall, Minister, there as well, it was the money of orphans that were basically looted. So yeah, I'm very proud of that history and what we were able to achieve as the DSO Minister. I think we were able to try and achieve at a high level, deal with white-collar criminals. I wasn't in charge when we dealt with some of the other phenomena, some of the violent phenomena, so I don't lay claim to that. But these are the ones when I was heading up the organization, and I think it contributed to the kind of impact that we made as an organization.
Okay, moving to the next segment, can I confirm that you currently have no directorship, hold no directorship, nor any business interests?
No, Minister.
Not at all. Okay.
We're conservative by nature, and it's always been my view that I work, I earn a salary, and I spend what I earn.
And also, can we confirm in terms of health-wise that nothing precludes you or will be impede
Indeed, Minister,
you holding
nothing.
the office? Okay.
But just take you back. I mean, it's not a directorship, but I did disclose my involvement in a bursary fund. I think I did disclose that in the bursary fund, the Rhodes University Black Students Alumni Fund. I'm not a director. I'm a committee member.
No, it's not in the disclosure.
It's not a directorship. It's not a directorship.
What is it?
It's a bursary fund. In my character reference, Lincoln Marley refers to it. Lincoln and myself, and together with another friend, we serve on that. It's not a directorship, it's a committee. We raise funds. We support black students who study law at Rhodes University, but it's not a directorship. So that's why I didn't disclose it as a directorship.
Okay, what is it?
It's a Section 18 vehicle that we've created so that we source funds from the few of us.
So you fundraise?
We fundraise amongst ourselves.
Or amongst yourselves?
Amongst ourselves. We
Okay.
We have, each one is meant to give a particular amount every year. Some are generous, they give a bit more. Sometimes one struggles, including myself, and you give a bit less. But yeah, it's an initiative we've run, and we've been fairly successful. It's been, I think Lincoln reminds me, we've been doing it for 19 years, Minister.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you. I think that's clear. I'm done with the questionnaire, and we'll move to the next segment, which I will start leading, and members of the panel will follow on that one. Okay.
Just one follow-up. Advocate Mop, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, yourself, sir.
I'm good, thanks. Between you and Advocate Bell,
Yes.
who is senior
Well-
in the ranking of work?
Interesting question. At some point in the past, I was a senior, but now she's my senior. I report to her, and I support her in her endeavors.
As matter stands, she is your boss.
Yes, if you want to characterize it as that, she's the head of the organization, and
One
she
accounts to the
leads.
other, so-
I account to her, yes. I signed a performance agreement with her, and yeah, she's the head of the office, and I'm in that office.
And you are recommending each other for this position.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because when, I'm not sure how much I should disclose now of what you said, but when
About that statement.
that
statement.
No, I'm going to clarify now, Minister.
Take your time, just be
No,
calm.
so the context is important. We had a senior management conference a while back, and I pride myself when I go to. I may be based in the Western Cape, but I see myself as the leader of the organization. So the fact that I'm based in the Western Cape doesn't deter me when I get to a national platform to express myself and tell people what I think. That everyone in the organization knows me. Some may think I'm too opinionated, but if you don't speak, no one will know what you think. And so I do that. And at the conference, and it's no reflection on my colleagues and my peers, but I came to the realization that I have something to offer the organization. And that if the opportunity arose, I would avail myself. And I had a conversation with her. When the announcement was made that nominations and applications had to be made, I went to see her. And I didn't ask what she was going to do. I went to tell her that I'm going to avail myself. She reflected on it, and I mean, eventually she's here, she agreed to it. But from the word go, I thought, given my contribution to the organization over the years, given what I see as a need for leadership, confident in my own ability, that I can lead the organization, I've presented myself. So that's the context. I didn't need to ask for permission. We had a very good conversation about it, and she knows I support her unconditionally, because it's not about me and the title or her and the title. It's about the work that we do and what we can do to achieve and meaningful differences in the lives of our people. And so that's what motivates me. And yeah.
No, thanks, Advocate Mop. I just wanted to get that out there because earlier we asked Advocate Bell about it, and I just thought perhaps we should also get it from you from
there is
that
a follow-up on it.
perspective.
Don't close it.
Thanks.
Prof. Fikeni, I can hear you want to close it.
Yes. Is it something common that you would recommend each other for any other role? And as such, can you share with us the discussions and the motivations that we should motivate for each other?
Well, maybe I should characterize. So I am here presenting my candidate. I'm not here recommending Advocate Bell. let me clarify that first and foremost, in case there's a misconception.
Yes.
So I think maybe where the not misconception, but maybe where the need for clarity is, the managers in the office, they got together and they had a discussion. Myself and Advocate Bell weren't part of that. They had a discussion, and amongst them, they've decided they're going to support both of us. Each individual made their own decision. In fact, I didn't even try until very late to see who signed it, because to me, whether someone had signed or not, it would not be a reflection of my interaction with that individual and the work that we do as a collective. So it was not a strategy between Advocate Bell and myself to say, okay, let's position ourselves. You do this and I do that. No. We had a discussion one-on-one, because I wanted it to be clear. I wanted her to understand the fact that I'm presenting myself doesn't mean that I'm disregarding her. She's still the DPP, and that's why I say, and she knows unconditional support. And whatever the outcome here, I've said to her as well, if nothing comes of this for me, she knows I'll be back there doing exactly what I do every day, supporting her, because supporting her is not supporting her as Advocate Nicolette Bell, it is supporting the work that we do as the prosecution. So that was the discussion. So it's not... we're not trying to lobby here saying, okay, if there are two of us and there's six altogether, then what are our chances together? No. I want to clarify that. It's none of that. It's the managers who had independent discussions and who decided to support both of us.
Thank you, Minister. Mine is just a point of clarity. You were a state advocate in the Western Cape office 1st of May 95 to 30th of June 98. And then, this is senior 98, but for senior state advocate, it was 98, July and October. So you were senior for 3 months, and then senior for 3 months, that's fine.
Could I just clarify that for you?
If you could clarify.
Mr. Panyamagwalde? So I became a senior in the AG's office, as we call it, the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
But then the transition had happened, the NPA was formed, and we used to call it IDOC, the Investigating Director on Organized Crime and Public Safety. That opened up. And Percy's son had been a deputy in the office, Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. I think the panel will recall the legendary Frank Khan used to be the Director of Public Prosecutions, and Advocate Percy's son was one of his deputies.
Oh.
And then when the NPA was formed and Mr. Nguka became the NDPP, he drew Advocate Son into the Investigating Director on Organized Crime. So that structure opened up, and I essentially transferred in the position of a senior from what is now the DPP office to the Investigating Directorate, and continued as a senior in that environment. So no longer in the what we call the DPP office now, but in the Investigating Directorate. And there, different to the Scorpions, there we were prosecutors from the NPA with police officers who were seconded from the police. In other words, they were part of the police. They had a police commander. At the time, they had which is the equivalent rank of a brigadier, who was their commander. And so that was the difference. The police, we worked together, but the police had their own command structure. We had our command structure. And then when the DSO was formed, there was a single command structure. And in the case of the DSO in the Western Cape, I headed up that component.
Thanks. Mr. Mtlo?
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay, we'll move on to the next segment. The first one I want to raise is because this position is national. And looking at your CV, your footprint is only in the Western Cape. Mm-hmm. How would you be able to ensure the organization in terms of exposure to deal with all the issues that relates to the provinces, different priorities in terms of those in those provinces, and your understanding of the challenges that we currently experience nationally?
Minister, and I am a humble person, but I must say, I think it would be seamless. I think I've been fortunate in that the roles that I've played at a provincial level has given me lots of exposure. It's not something new for me to have meetings with ministers, national ministers. I've been exposed to that. Provincial ministers have been exposed to that. It's not new for me to be exposed to the National Commissioner of Police, senior police officials at a national level. I've been involved in those kinds of engagements, or certainly have been exposed to that. Maybe not formal meetings with the National Commissioner. I don't want to overstate that. But when Commissioner Tim Williams was the commissioner, just to give you an example, I had a conversation with him about the provincial commissioner in the Western Cape, sharing my own views and my reflections on the provincial commissioner, telling him that I thought that particular commissioner was one of his best commissioners. So I'm not going to be starstruck coming to the national scene, Minister. As I said, I'm confident in my ability. And I think I can interact well with people, and I say humility because it comes back to my leader's philosophy. You must be able to speak to people, engage with people, build a rapport, and of course it's not to become friends, but it's about the professionalism. Each one exuding their own professionalism, and ultimately it's about the work that we do. As I said, I've been involved in national engagements. I've been involved in national task teams. I've been involved, I didn't put it in the CV, I've been part of national investigations, myself, a member of state security, a member of police. I did an investigation many years ago. So I've interacted with people at various tiers. And I'm confident that it's not a step too far for me to do that. In terms of what the issues are, Minister, I lie awake at night worrying about the future of our country. I'm sure many South Africans do. I've now resorted to listening to a podcast at that time of the morning to try and get myself back to sleep. But I'm concerned about the future of our country, concerned about the threats that we face as a nation, the threats we face as the criminal justice system. And I'm in the prosecution because I want to make a difference. And that is why I'm availing myself, because I think I can make that difference. I can be part of that positive change. What I represent, I think I can do that. If one looks at what's happening at the Commission, Matlanga Commission, what's happening at the ad hoc committee, the picture is not very good of the criminal justice system as a whole. And so we need to change that, Minister. We need to change that fundamentally, because our people must have confidence in our ability to effect the change in their lives that they want. But it's not just about talking and explaining that to them. It's also about demonstrating to them that we are able to do that. And that is why I think the imperative for all of us in the criminal justice system is to get ourselves, to get our house in order, ensure that we have ethical, credible leadership who are committed to the cause and only to the cause, no other considerations, because there's work to be done. And some of these issues are detracting from the good work that is done every day by good police officers and good prosecutors. And so everyone is tainted with a particular brush. And so that's why it's important for the leadership to change that narrative. You know, Minister, I said earlier we're conservative by nature as lawyers. And I've been one of those who've been very reluctant to engage the media too often. But even I have come to the realization that we are being overrun in that space. We're being overrun in the space. People are saying what they want to, they're spreading falsehoods. And so there's a need for us to change tact. And I'm one of those, maybe belatedly, but I think we need to claim that space. And it starts with the good work that we do. Now, the media, if I can just speak a bit about that, it's contested space, because sometimes we do a lot of good work and you see none of that. So we do 9 good things, none of it's in the media, 1 bad thing, and that's front page news. So it is about trying to get the balance. And we've got to find ways of communicating directly with our people. One of our senior colleagues suggested in our meetings when we discussed it at some point, but why don't we take out adverts ourselves? Take out 2 pages on the newspaper and tell the good stories. It's not a bad idea. I'm not sure what it would cost, but that maybe is an option. But I know there's youngsters these days, or young people, let me start youngsters, young people these days, they consume media differently. So maybe there are other avenues to explore for us to try and ensure that where we do good, people hear about it, they see it, and where we don't do well, we explain what happened. Because that will also instill confidence. At least if we acknowledge we've done wrong and that we intend to correct that, that should inspire some confidence as well. Yeah.
You've reflected on one area more around communication, and I want to maybe package it together, because what I'm trying to get is your vision for the NPA. What is it that you're going to do differently? You've highlighted the challenges, the commissions that we are seeing, the ad hoc committees, but also one wrong thing done. It's in the. What would you do differently?
So let me start by saying, Minister, so without giving you a long convoluted sentence of what I see, what are the anchors that must underpin that? One is the starting point is obviously independence. And to demonstrate, because there is the narrative still that the NPA is captured and the NPA is this and the NPA is that, is to demonstrate that our decisions are only informed by 2 things. It's the law and the facts. And that communicating those decisions is one way of doing it. And so there must be a clear understanding that those are the only considerations. Anything extraneous to that is ultra virus. So firstly, that's the first thing. It may not be different, Minister, but it's a question of reinforcing. Once again, in the context of some of the noise, and I'm not saying noise because it may sound demeaning, but of the concern. Let me say the concern that people have that the NPA is not independent. And I'm talking about decision making when I talk about independence, Minister. The second one is I've touched on this, the question of ethical leadership. And it's interesting that one of the critiques against me by a member of the public was that have I been subjected to a lifestyle audit? So that's an initiative that I welcome and endorse. Because if the view is that a person who has been subjected to a lifestyle audit is more credible than one that is not, then we must embrace that. Because that's part of instilling the confidence that we want to have. But it's more than just that document saying that you're fine. It's also your conduct, how you conduct yourself to ensure that we are an ethical organization. Then, the coming part of that is being a capable organization, Minister. And so there, I have some ideas about how I think we can change things. Firstly, before we develop the NPA to be capable, there are a couple of prerequisites in my view, Minister. The first is we need to stabilize the leadership tier. To stabilize the leadership tier. Because the NDPP is leaving now, the Cox post is still vacant, Sis Oma has left, her post is vacant, someone is acting, and I believe there may be other changes as well at that senior leadership level. So we need to stabilize that. The second thing that I would want us to settle is, what is our operating model as the organization? What is our delivery model? We thought we had settled this question a while back, but there's still murmurs in the organization about what is our operating model. And what do I mean by that? Where does delivery take place in the organization? In my view, the delivery vehicle of the organization is the office of the DPP. That's the delivery vehicle. So prosecutions resort under the DPP, and so we must reinforce what happens there. So why is that important? If we agree, of course, this is my view, Minister. We'll have to engage internally about whether my view prevails, but I have a very strong view that that is the model. The DPP office is the delivery vehicle of the organization. If we agree on that as an organization, then the question is, what role does head office play to support the DPP? Because the NDPP must play that role. Because if we disagree on the delivery vehicle, we need to have a different capability at head office compared to the one that I have in mind. And so we need to settle that. Once we settle that, then it's a question of how do we ensure we have the capabilities to deliver then as an organization. So let's start at the DPP office. Firstly, we need to ensure that we not only are able to deliver in specialist environments, we also need to deliver within what we call general prosecutions. The normal prosecutor in the regional court, that's the bulk of us. And why is that important, Minister? My concern, and it's not only my concern, there are others who share the concern as well, is that the congestion in the court system at the moment is of such a nature that prosecutors in the district court are hardly litigating. So what happens there? People pay admission of guilt, there may be a plea, and so you don't have a prosecutor being exposed to litigation leading evidence. So what's the consequence of that? Now that individual must learn to litigate in the regional court. And we can't afford that because the regional court is where we deal with serious matters. You must have the basics as a prosecutor when you get to the regional court. Yes, you can refine your skill there, but you can't learn to prosecute in the regional court. It has an ancillary effect, Minister, which I'm just going to mention and park there because it's not part of what I need to do as someone who aspires to be the NDPP. If a district court magistrate is not litigating, is not hearing evidence, and goes to act in the regional court and has to hear evidence for the first time in the regional court, it has consequences as well of the quality of decision making you get into in the regional court. And as we know, the regional court is a very important forum. The High Court may get all the glamour, but the regional court is really the engine room of dealing with serious offences in the country. So it has that consequence. So one of the things that we are doing as an organisation is we're bringing back the tutor, and the tutor will play a role with the aspirant aspirant prosecutors. I want to broaden that role to see to what extent.
Explain it more, because we do have currently the aspirant prosecutors program. So
yes, maybe just to give it a bit more detail, Minister. So the panel know that we have the aspirant training program. So I'm not suggesting that I'm bringing that in. That is there. It's individuals, law graduates, members who've been at legal aid, who are absorbed to the program, into the prosecution on the basis of an aspirant program. It's a 12-month period, and thereafter they may qualify to become prosecutors. We're able to absorb most of them. But not all of them, not all the time. So in the past, Minister, we used to have what we call a tutor, and the tutor's focus was to upskill the aspirants. Then for career pathing, it became a bit of a cul-de-sac for some of the aspirants and for the tutors, and they felt they didn't really see a future for themselves because they were stuck in that position and there was no career path. So most of them were absorbed into senior public prosecutor roles, and so the tutors fell away. But the tutors are being revived now, and so I see the tutors playing a role not only with the aspirants but also with the district court. But then, Minister, insofar as the regional court is concerned, and I'm dealing still with the general prosecutions, I would like to see retired, experienced prosecutors being brought in to mentor regional court prosecutors, because we know there's a deficiency now, and it is not one that the manager can cure, because the manager in the regional court is an extremely busy individual, managing the engagement with the police, the quality of the dockets. So it is very rare to find a control prosecutor or an SPP being able to go into a court and to observe what is happening with a particular prosecutor. So my idea is to get retired colleagues who have the necessary competence to play that role. And that you almost do an in-person assessment of every prosecutor in the regional court. What is the shortcoming here? This person is fine. No, we know he or she can continue. This individual needs a bit of work, and so that is quite an intensive job, and that is why I'm saying, Minister, it's not something that the normal line manager can do. It has got to be an additional initiative for that to happen, and so that's my vision for the regional court. Because once again, I repeat myself: the regional court is a critical forum, and we must succeed in the regional court, and so. Putting a mechanism like that in place, or an initiative like that, will really ensure that we have the people that are able to do the job. Now let me deal with the specialist environment. So there is a capability initiative now to ensure that we have the requisite skills in the specialist environment, and so we are fortunate. We have some colleagues, I believe, who are abroad this week as part of that initiative as well, to try and see how do we put together a framework that capacitates the individuals in the specialist environment. And so we'll have to reflect on that. What exactly does that mean, and how can we do that? The other thing, Minister, if I can just talk about prosecutions generally, is and sometimes the middle managers tell us the young prosecutors don't want to read anymore. Huh? They want to watch TikTok videos. They want to do, and I say, but you can't do law without reading. So one of the things, Minister, I think we should consider as an organization, because look, we have training, but I like the idea of this continuous professional development to compel you to do something, and don't tell us you want to do something which is miles away from where you are. That it's a nice to have. Let's look at where you are, what are you involved in, and let's try and build a framework where you can ensure that, because that forces you to upskill yourself as well. Can I just say this, Minister? When I speak to prosecutors, and I normally speak to the aspirants as part of my governance portfolio, I always suggest to them that the pinnacle of prosecution is being at the DPP office in the High Court. But when I do that, I do not demean the regional court, nor do I demean the district court, because some colleagues find their space in the district court and they're happy to remain there. And they choose to remain there. Some choose to remain in the regional court, and we respect that. But we need to ensure that the individuals in those tiers are capable of delivery. So that's on making sure that we are able to do our work as an organization. Then in terms of leadership, Minister, sometimes I think it's a bit of hit and miss. Because there's this fear, I can't say who my successor is going to be. And of course that's important, because that's not acceptable. But it shouldn't be a mystery in the organization about who the contenders are. It shouldn't be a mystery. And so what I would like to see is for us to look at individuals who potentially could be, and I'm starting at the lowest tier of leadership, a control prosecutor. What must you be able to do to be a control prosecutor? Let's identify people, let's give them the exposure, so that when the control prosecutor retires or leaves, we have 4 or 5 candidates. We're not scrambling now to say, ooh, who's going to do this job? Same with senior public prosecutor. The same with chief prosecutor. I can go through the tiers. Same with deputy director of public prosecution. And Minister, one of the critical things that we're going to be confronted with as an organization is at the DPP level. That DPPs are going to be leaving now over the next few years. And so why should we wait for my colleague in a particular province to leave, and then we start saying, okay, now who's going to be that? Why can we not have a group of individuals that we put through a process so that they are capable of filling that role? And I've seen the commentary, Minister, about the appointment process, and of course it's a presidential prerogative in terms of the NDPP, deputy nationals, and as well as DPPs. But I like the idea of this process. Huh? I like the idea of a process where people come and present themselves. Because for some, I'm not including myself in that, but for some, they may never get an opportunity to present themselves because they may not be noticed. Huh? They may be somewhere in the organization and the head office doesn't know about them. So it will afford that opportunity as well. But more coming back to the point, internally, how do we build that base so that we have a cohort who are equally capable of taking over that responsibility? So I'm still busy with capability, Minister. Then if we come to modernization, everyone is talking about the phase we are in terms of the transition in the digital environment. Everyone's talking about the use of AI. But Minister, I'm not sure if you know, but we still use Excel to do performance reporting. And the age of Sibeleko will know that many of the findings are human error because data is captured at a local level, at a court level. It's consolidated at a court center level. It's consolidated at a court, the cluster level, and then it goes to VGM. So there's lots of scope for us to make errors. So as part of modernization, of course, we must leverage technology.
IJS.
Exactly. Yeah. But Minister, before we even get to that level, I want to try and see what can we do so that a prosecutor doesn't have to fill in a sheet at the day, and there be a consolidation process, so that we can try and ensure that as a manager, you don't have to wait until the end of the month. You have a dashboard, a weekly dashboard of what is happening in your environment. What's happening at a particular court center. Because that will not only benefit us as the prosecution, it will also benefit the presiding officers. I must park that, Minister, because that's an entire topic on its own in terms of our engagement and at the court center level. But to come back to the modernization, so certainly I would want to see that. I know the current governors believe in the ECMS, Minister. The current governors in the NPA. And so we've done quite a bit. We've engaged with the Office of the Auditor General to try and see how we use ECMS as the primary vehicle, but we also supplement with manual stats. And what that process means in practice, Minister, it's prosecutors doing that. Not support staff doing that, it's prosecutors doing that. You know, Minister, I'm part of a group, it's a WhatsApp group. I'm maybe a bit of a voyeur, I don't contribute, but it's the ECMS group. It's the ECMS group. Okay. Prosecutors engaging with someone at head office who's trying to assist and to facilitate. And it pains me, truly it pains me, when I see people are writing late at night on weekends, there's this problem with the system, I can't get on. So the system, in my view, is not what it is intended to be. And you'll recall, Minister, we are in the center of the value chain. So the police load, if the police load, we can't do anything on ECMS. So we rely on the police to load. Then we must play our role in the ECMS. And I must say, there are many offices where DOJ officials are assisting us, Minister, because the prosecutors just cannot get to that function. And why is that function important? Because the outcome in court is not going to be captured. I have another view, Minister. Maybe I can just share this now. The NPA is not responsible for court information. The NPA is responsible for performance information for the NPA. And often it gets conflated. And we get asked to explain what the court outcomes. I know the DOJ is undergoing a transition, and my own idea is, if the OCJ takes responsibility for the entire structure, my own view is the DOJ can become the vehicle that is responsible for court performance and the outcome of court performance, and to engineer itself so that they drive that process, the DOJ. It's just an idea, Minister, to play that role. so that we can focus on NPA performance, so that we manage the performance of the organization. So that was modernization. Of course, I spoke about independence earlier. I spoke about capacity, professionalism. Professionalism.
And perhaps even going into, are you saying these things are not done now? Because we're looking at the future.
I'm looking at the future, Minister. I'm saying we need, as a country, we need an institution that is responsible for court performance. Because the OCJ, if you look at the OCJ report,
No, I'm meaning the whole thing. Everything about leadership, about independence, about capable organization.
Some of it we are doing, Minister, and that's why I emphasize some of it we need to reinforce. Some of it we need to reinforce. So I'm not suggesting that all of this is novel, but I think my ideas about developing the next tier of leadership, doing that now, the role at the regional court of having retired individuals, those are my ideas about how I think we can build that cohort. Because that speaks to the professionalism that we have. That we have people who are able to and are capable of doing the job as well.
Yeah,
and
because
people,
I want to link that to performance. You sitting in Western Cape, and I said this to the previous candidate, which I'm going to flag with you, and we look at the conviction rate. For example, performance or postponement in courts due to prosecutors is sitting at 8.1. So I take you are part of the management in the Western Cape. So you would work together as a team to look at performance of NPA within the province. So postponement of cases is 8.1. And I flag it because we should have 0 caused by NPA. Coming to the other, let me finish the stats. The other issue, we look at performance. In the statistics of performance, as per the last annual report, and then we can go to the last 5 years that I've done, because on the sexual offenses, I've gone to the last, and others I've looked. But the worrying when I looked at the last 5 years, because that's what I do, to evaluate performance of the institutions and the organization. When you look at essential infrastructure, which is critical, I mean, this is infrastructure that we need as a country, where it has been damaged and we need conviction rates. You find that Western Cape together with Free State are at the bottom. We're sitting at 73%. And I'm going to go to the 3 where we are at the bottom, and I think it's quite too much for me to have a province having 3 areas where they are at the bottom. And areas which are critical. Murder, we are at the bottom, hovering together with Free State, Johannesburg, and Limpopo. We're sitting at 78, while others are sitting at 80 and 90%. Worse is sexual offenses. Sexual offenses, we're hovering there with Johannesburg and Northwest. But also, we are at the bottom there. Now, with sexual offenses, and this is what I was saying, because, I mean, this is one of the critical areas where even President declares it a national crisis. But you look at our performance over years, looking at, you've been in the Western Cape for some time, for almost all your careers. The last 5 years, we've been dipping in terms of stats. Now, as a candidate for NDPP, the public wants to know, are we not transporting one problem from which could be contained in one province to becoming a national problem? Because if the interventions are not working or the ideas are not working in Western Cape, how would they work when it becomes complex with difference in cultures and languages and all those diversities across the country?
No, thank you for affording me the opportunity. If I can start with infrastructure, we've discussed this in great detail in the division, and we've as a consequence of that, we've tried to work out remedial action. If you look at what causes us to have that level of conviction rate, essentially it is the quality of the evidence. So in the initial phase, if you look at when we debrief, what is going wrong with essential infrastructure? Because it should be obvious. Huh? The written reports we get, so these are not people just telling us off the cuff. Written reports we get it's the quality of evidence.
Explain that.
So the police officers...
Because police would say that you guys blame them unnecessarily. when it's you who are not going to win cases? Maybe explain.
That's why it's always important to have us in the same room at the same time, Minister.
Unfortunately, in this case, I do not have that opportunity, but take us through.
But just to come back to that, so it's the quality of the evidence. So sometimes an individual is arrested with a piece of infrastructure, and when they get challenged as to why are they saying this infrastructure belongs to Eskom, to Telkom, whichever, they make concessions that no, they're able to. There are no markings on the contraband. We've had cases where the police have mingled some of the evidence, and so it's the SAP 13 record. So it's normally a question of quality of evidence. So what have we done, Minister? And that's the important part. We've said, but let us engage with the individuals who will do this work. Whether it's at the Metro Police level, whether it's the SAPS members, so that we can explain to them what exactly is required. What is the evidential chain that's required, and what is required when you identify a particular item? Describe it. And so that work happens not only with detectives, but also with the frontline staff, because they are the individuals normally. If you talk to a detective, he or she will say, no, but the uniform people did this arrest, the shift was changing, they didn't do the affidavits, they'll do the affidavits tomorrow. So we've tried to suggest, but we need a different approach. The affidavits, because that is what the case is based on, the affidavit is critical. You can't come and tell me 6 months later what you recall of the incident if it hasn't been documented. We're going to have difficulty. So what we've tried to do, Minister, insofar as infrastructure is concerned, is to focus on that in particular, to show that the quality of what is required in the docket. If I can come to murder, Minister, and so I acknowledge the fact that you say we're at the lower end and that we are at 78, and the performance standard that we expect is 74%. So we meet the targets. Can I just say this, and I say this to all managers, in the main, Minister, if you look at our performance, we by and large meet our performance indicators. But that doesn't mean, and I'm known to say this, and I'll repeat it here, it doesn't mean you can go to Kailicha or to Mitchell's Plain on a Monday morning and tell our people that the NPA in the Western Cape is achieving all of its targets, because it means nothing to our people. Performance indicators are just that. It doesn't impact on the lived reality. So
That's
why?
not correct.
Sorry, Minister.
The target for sexual offences is not 68.
No, I said I'm at murder. I said 74 for murder, 78. I'm coming to sexual offences. The expected performance standard there is 70%, but I'll deal with sexual offences now. Just insofar as the murder is concerned, Minister, we have not a unique phenomena, but a lot of the murders that we have in the Western Cape is gang-related. Gangs are involved, and so we have a very, very real problem. We have a very real problem. Because in many of those cases, we are not able to put the charges to the accused. Because witnesses may observe something, they'll file an affidavit, but when it comes time for us to lead that evidence, they're reluctant. And that's if we're lucky that we get to a stage where we have a docket and we are able to identify an individual. In many instances, there's just silence. We don't even know who the perpetrator is. We may have a sense, but we don't know. But turning to the ones where we actually litigate, the other phenomenon you have is a witness testifies in chief, everything is fine. As soon as the cross-examination starts, all sorts of concessions are made. And that is our reality. So Minister, with respect, I mean, I think for us to achieve 78% in that environment where it's very challenging, we are meeting the expected standard, but it is not having the desired impact in our communities, because that is where the violence is still prevalent. So how do we remedy that? If you look at some of the big cases that we're doing at the moment in the division, dedicated teams of investigators, dedicated prosecutors. I'm sure you would have heard, Minister, that on the bigger organized crime cases now, we put 3 prosecutors on a case. So that's resource intensive. Huh? But why do we do that? One, we demonstrate the importance of the case to show that you can't intimidate all 3 prosecutors. You may try to. If something happens, there's someone else who will pick up pick up the spear and continue. But that kind of dedication has given us the platform where we have now many of the big gang leaders in the Western Cape before the High Court. Many of them at an advanced stage. So coming back to the issue of what do we do with murders? Minister, one of the issues that's been bothering me is what can we do better for in terms of witness protection? I mean, I know of the recent incident of witness D who died, and I heard your comment in the media on that. And that is what happens in practice. I've always I'm not originally from the Western Cape, so I can make fun of them sometimes. Although my wife says I've been there for 30 years now, I'm one of them. But I always found it amazing that individuals in the Western Cape do not want to go onto the witness protection program and be relocated. For whatever reason, we have difficulty with that. And I've been asking myself the question rhetorically in my own mind, what can we do to make it not appealing in the sense that there's some benefit to be had, but what can we offer our people so that they have comfort that if they access the system, we are able to look after them, look after their families. And I know all of this costs money, Minister, but we have to do something as a country. We've got to find a way of saying, in an environment where we need witness testimony to ensure that we deal with a particular phenomenon, in this case, gangsterism and murder, in this instance that we're talking about, we've got to offer our people something. And so I would really want to engage with witness protection to see what can be done to have that. I know people have romantic notions. They watch movies and they think we can do all sorts of things. And so there are limitations. But if you look at some of the key cases we've had success, Minister, we've had people on the witness protection program. So the program is not unimportant. It is an important vehicle or tool that we can use. So with respect to my colleagues in the rest of the country, different phenomena they're dealing with. Ours is slightly different. And I did say, I qualified that statement by saying we're not the only ones. I appreciate that there are other parts of the country that are experiencing similar phenomena as well. Sexual offences, Minister. Sexual offences is, as we all know, a very difficult environment. So we meet the expected performance standard, but that, once again, is not ringing the bell and celebrating, because we know that there's more to be done. So we meet the expected performance standard, and I must say, Minister, we invest a lot of time. So the expected performance standard is 70%, Minister. Huh? 68%.
Yes.
Okay, well we just short then. But we invest a lot of time in sexual offences, Minister. We have, and I'm sure the DPP would have spoken about this, we have structures that focus exclusively on how do we deal with sexual offences. Once again, when we debrief, when we ask for written reports, in most instances it's a question of quality of evidence. So to me the important part is how do we as the collective ensure that when the complainants engage with the system, that the system is of such a nature, whether it's at the TCC or with the detectives directly, that we create the environment that gives the individual confidence to firstly to enter the system, because that's one of our main challenges, as we all know, is that many complainants don't want to enter the system. They may go to the TCC, access some of the services, but not follow the path all the way through to the court system. They'll follow the path, go from victim to survivor with all of the support services, but elect not to do that. So in terms of sexual offences, Minister, we have a very strong regime, as I say, and I actually think that is the model that I would want to replicate elsewhere. Despite the fact that we may be a bit short now, because what we have with sexual offences is we have dedicated prosecutors in the regional courts in particular, where most of these are heard. And those individuals...
Can you explain that? Because I'm battling to understand what you are referring to. We do have, in all the courts where the sexual offences courts are, we've got dedicated prosecutors for sexual offences.
So
but the issue here, which I'm referring to your performance and statistics, and I'm trying to understand when you say you're not as bad, it's almost like you're brushing. But this is a performance, I've said, over 5 years that has been dipping. From 1920 financial year, if you look at those annual reports, it's 5 years consistent going down on a critical matter like this. I don't know if... Because the issue, when you say we've looked at it, the courts we do have, I mean, where we've designated sexual offences courts, we've got specialized prosecutors focusing on that across the country,
Yeah.
not only in Western Cape.
Firstly, Mr. Can I assure you that
What are we dealing with, and
First-
what intervention there?
Firstly, can I assure you, I'm not demeaning the performance. I take it very seriously. It's and I've always said it's a difficult environment. Not every prosecutor can do that. So we have dedicated courts, Minister, but not all of them are pure sexual offences courts. And that's part of the challenge that we have. So when we talk about the model of ensuring that the prosecutors there have the necessary training, have the necessary expertise and the capacity, and there we rely on the SOCA unit to play that role, which is a very important role, because we recognize it's a specialist area that we need to focus on. So it's really ensuring that the individuals, because that is what we need to do as the prosecution, is to ensure that the individuals who are there are capable and are able to do the work that's required of them. I accept that we may not be meeting the performance standard. That will be a question of evidence, Minister. And as the guarantee I think we need is that the individuals who are in the environment are able to do the work that is required of them. I think that is the guarantee we need. Huh?
Minister. Oh, okay.
I just wanted to go back to your framing initially, where you said how media and the perception out there might be distorting the actual performance. Is it the perception or is it the actual problems in the performance of the NPA? And then somewhere you went on to recommend a number of reforms, so I was a bit not sure as to whether you're saying the problem is performance or the problem is perception.
No, thank you for the question, Professor Kenny. So if I can deal with my suggestion of reforms, that is to reinforce the performance. So in other words, I'm not saying that the performance itself is a problem, because I try to draw a distinction between the work that prosecutors do on a daily basis, the good work that is being done, and a lot of it happens at that particular tier. So that needs to be reinforced. The fact that we're doing well doesn't mean we rest easy. We reinforce that. And the reforms were in the context of my concern that we need to ensure that the people have the requisite skill set to be in that tier. So the distortion, in my view, happens with where things go wrong, and they go horribly wrong, and they have gone horribly wrong. We've seen that in the media. Is that is the theme then that is communicated, and the assertion then is that the entire organization, that particular instance is demonstrative of the entire organization, and that is the perception that we need to correct. That yes, where we've done wrong, we have to acknowledge that we've done wrong, and then tell our people, but what are we going to do differently? But then, in the same breath, not lose sight of the fact that there is a lot of good work that is being done by prosecutors on a daily basis, and that's the distortion I referred to, Professor Kenny.
Maybe just a quick follow-up on that. Then you went on to highlight a number of interdependencies which make NPA not to succeed. Can you neatly isolate those things, inherent weaknesses within the NPA, as different from all other interdependencies that may be caused by the judiciary, the environment, and several other things?
Certainly, Professor, because the point I was making, or maybe emphasize the point. A prosecutor must own the decision to prosecute. Because once you take the decision to prosecute, there's no hiding place. Because once you've decided to prosecute, at that stage you must be confident, firstly, that the facts support it, the law is on your side, and that you have the prospects of a successful prosecution. In those instances, it doesn't help them to come and say afterwards, no, but the case was weak because of so and so and so. So I'm with you there. So that, you distinguish that. Because that you must address up front. In other words, once I make the decision, I own the process now. So, and that's the point I was making. to be able to own the process, you must be a skilled prosecutor to be able to present your case to court. Of course, there are no guarantees that every time that you'll have a conviction. But you must have the skill set to do that. And so if things go wrong, in other words, if not achieving a conviction is as a result of your conduct as the prosecutor, that's something we must deal with. That is clearly our responsibility. A silly example, if you don't call a key witness in a case, you close the state's case. There must be consequences for those kinds of things, where you do things which are obviously wrong. So our job is to ensure that we have the capability to present the case. I'm not talking about beforehand, and I'm not talking about finalizing the case, because there's also challenges there in the delays in getting the cases finalized. That's a separate process. The process I'm focusing now is owning what we present as the prosecutor. That is our responsibility, and we must stand and fall by that responsibility.
Maybe just on that one. So you are going back, because I think what the follow-up is about is when you made a reference, when I said the statistics, and you said it's because the investigation has not been, and that's why I made a comment about the police, and you said that that's why you need us in the room. But now you're acknowledging that the responsibility to take the case to court is that of a prosecutor. Yeah. And therefore you can't blame the police, because you'd have made a determination that this case is ready. Therefore, the conviction rate of any of those cases can be the fault of the police.
I'm with you, Minister, and we're on the same page. Just maybe if the impression was I said that we blame the outcome, the point I wasn't doing that. I made a different point there in terms of the investigation. You'll recall I even made the point that sometimes we don't even get the individual, so we discard those cases completely. So I'm unequivocal. And I think I'm consistent, Minister, that when we decide to prosecute, there's no one else to blame. It's our responsibility. I think I'm consistent there, Minister.
But then what becomes the reasons? Because what we are trying to understand is that your understanding of the difficulty, and as I said, because it originates from what I said, that you're sitting with this performance in the Western Cape, and the nation is watching and saying, are you not transporting the problem there? And we wanted to understand, do you understand the complexity of these cases, why we've not been able to have the success rate that we would want to see, and the percentage that I've named? Murder rate in the Western Cape sitting at 76. It means we are not able to prosecute the others in the rest of the cases. And I can name the number of cases, because it's versus against a particular number of cases, as you know. The issue of sexual offenses. One woman raped is one too many. Now, we are not able to prosecute. So it can be the issue of investigation, because you would have determined that this, and what we are trying to understand, what is the cause and what interventions have been done? Would that translate to national? Will you be able to assist us so that we don't dip in terms of statistics?
No, I'm with you, Minister. And that's why I spoke about the interventions at the prosecutor level, to ensure that the prosecutor has the legal wherewithal to be able to present the case. I made the point earlier about quality of evidence. That is an important factor, the quality of evidence, because sometimes the quality of the case that you present deteriorates in cross-examination. That is a reality. So the assurance I can give you is that the process of ensuring that we have the right people with the right technical abilities to present the case to court, that is the assurance that we need. To be able to evaluate the evidence properly, to make decisions. Some people are conservative, and they say, look, I may not want to go to court, I won't do that. I say there's no need for that discretion. We have a process that we follow. You evaluate the evidence. If you're confident in the evidence, you're confident that it meets the evidential threshold, and that there is a case, and that there's a prospect for success, then you have to prosecute. And I think that is the assurance I'm giving you, Minister, to say that is the responsibility of the leadership, to ensure that the individuals who are in the field, who are executing those responsibilities, are capable of doing that. Because if they are not, that is a disaster.
Mr. Mavundlela, and then he will come.
Thanks. Thanks, Minister. I wanted to understand from you, Advocate, do I have to understand you to be saying the system is not holding? that the prosecutor-led investigation process is actually not yielding the results we would, as a country, ordinarily aspire to have? Should I understand you that way? Or that we don't have adequately trained or capable prosecutors, as you say, who are able to own the decisions that they make to prosecute? Just so that we are all clear, we don't misunderstand you, and we then understand where are the fault lines. And if you were to be appointed, you would then be able to go and correct those fault lines. Because I can tell you, whoever is watching these interviews is interested in that question.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. So firstly, I'm not suggesting that prosecutor-guided investigations is not working. That's certainly not my thesis. That works very well, and we have a number of instances where that work. Of course, we have the model with the specialized commercial crime prosecutors, who in many instances are co-located with detectives, and so that model works. We're talking about the general prosecutions now and the regional court, and so that model doesn't always apply. So by and large, those dockets are ones that are dealt with by station detectives. So that's the distinction I'm drawing. And let me also clarify, I'm certainly not being alarmist and saying that we have incompetent people in the regional court. I'm not saying that. I made the point earlier, we have prosecutors doing a lot of good work on a daily basis. I'm talking about ensuring that we have the pipeline, that we continuously have that expertise at that particular level to reinforce that. That is what I'm talking about. It may be a different proposition. But certainly I'm not diminishing or demeaning PGI. It works. It's a model that has been well documented in South Africa, so I'm certainly not doing that. Yeah.
If you were to be appointed, sorry, Minister, just one question. If you were to be appointed, and I want to take you back, maybe 2-3 questions back, you have said that, and I hope that you said that maybe in passing, that whoever wants to sit there, let them stay there, quote unquote. And I found that very disturbing, because you were talking about succession planning, as you eloquently put it, that we shouldn't be surprised as to who should then ascend when one person gets to either retire or resign or something, because people will retire and resign. What should I take out of that? Should I take it that we may be sitting with management that says we will motivate those that wants to be motivated, but will not put in place measures that would make everybody want to be motivated? Or is the environment so demotivating itself such that people have become comfortable with being salary earners, because then they don't see any growth out of themselves? Is that how we should understand it?
No. And I'm trying to contextualize the stay there. I thought I made the point in the context of a process where someone who aspires to be a DPP is able to bring their candidate forth themselves. I thought I made the point in that context. But to touch on whether, because that's mediocrity that you're describing now, where people are just there to earn a salary, do the bare minimum. That is certainly not the place or the prosecution services that I think we are, broadly speaking, or one that I seek to lead. I'm always at pains to say that there are prosecutors doing good work on a daily basis, and we must always acknowledge that. And to the extent that we've gone wrong, it's been in a few matters, and a few of those are too many. I take the point the Minister made earlier. Any one of them is one too many. But to decry or to demean the entire cohort of prosecutors is what I'm deliberately trying to avoid, because that is not accurate. And if you are here for the salary, I think the point I was making, sir, is Mr. Mvundlela, is about people who feel that they are they are happy in the district court. They find fulfillment. That's the point I was making. You remind me now. Fulfillment in the district court. And I'm saying that that should not be demeaning. You shouldn't look down on someone who finds fulfillment in the district court. For whatever reason, that's the point I was making. And thank you for reminding me about it. Same with the regional court. If people find fulfillment in the regional court because that it's difficult work, it's fulfilling work because you're dealing with serious offenses, if people are comfortable there, they might respect it. So it's certainly not about, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Mtlu.
Thanks, Minister. Advocate Mob, I find it a bit problematic. There are certain answers that you gave. And let me give context here. At the heart of the question now is performance management. Now, what I find from you is, and it's an impression, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it's a belated diagnosis of the problem, of the challenges that has resulted in Western Cape being plunged at the foot of the rankings in as far as those three areas are concerned. And I'm saying this against the backdrop of your response with regard to the 68% specifically in relation to sexual offenses. That you appeared to be taken by surprise that you were, not really meeting the standard, which is at 70%. So then what comes out of you in terms of the proposed interventions? It would mean that these are proposed interventions that you are imagining as being, forward-looking. It's not something that you, having diagnosed the problem or the challenges at infancy stages with your team, because you are a manager currently, that you put in place such interventions. And if you did put in place such interventions, you should be taking us into confidence in terms of what measures did you then put in place and what was the success of it, because this poor performance has been going on for quite some time, and we don't get to hear from you those type of interventions. So at the heart of this question is performance management, meaning you should be able to demonstrate monitoring systems as well as evaluation of performance at acceptable intervals.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. No, we certainly do that, sir. I was surprised at 68%, you're right. I didn't think we were at 68%. But that's another matter. I accept the figure. So we do exactly that. That is why we have monthly meetings. That is why we have a component. We have a deputy director of public prosecutions that manages what we call the sexual offences team with the senior prosecutors from those individual courts who sit and they go through that very process. What is going wrong at a particular court centre? What can we do? What can we do differently as the prosecution? We have that in place. And so I am surprised that it hasn't translated into 70%, because the figures that I last saw was more than 70%, but I accept the figure the minister gives. And you're right, I was taken aback by it. But we do that. So it's not a question of ex post facto analysis. That is exactly why we have the management meetings. We sit there as a collective. And then the individual teams. So we look at it broadly at a leadership level. How are we doing as an organization? Where are the pressure points? Where are the challenges? And then at a theme level, if I can call it that. In other words, the senior prosecutors who are responsible for those courts that we speak about, they then have the more detailed interrogations, feedback to us at a leadership level of the interventions that are being put in place. So I'm with you. It's part of our process.
One last one.
Maybe just to confirm, the figure used, it's on the published annual performance report of the NP of 2024-25.
No, I accept that, Minister.
Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. And one last question relates to your remark that you always have or engage in a rhetoric in as far as these challenges are concerned. You ask yourself questions, and at some point you would have sleepless nights and start having that monologue, if I may call it that way.
Yeah.
The challenge that I have with that is, as a manager, the moment you identify a performance gap, you need to deal with it at management level, raise it there, so that you come up with workable solutions at that level. And I don't get that from you, except that you engage in rhetoric.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. So the point I was making when I was talking about the sleepless nights is about my concern for the future of the country, and the challenge that we face in the criminal justice system. But to speak directly to your point, sir, that's exactly what I do, sir. And I'm able to do that not only in the area that I'm responsible for, but I do it across the board. Because when you sit at the management level, and this is something I preach to senior public prosecutors, to deputy directors, when we sit as a collective, you're not sitting there representing your particular court. And you mustn't sit there waiting to hear when I mention your court and then you want to speak about it. You're there to share your views as a collective. And so we do that, sir. So if the impression is that I pontificate in my own mind, I have a monologue, dialogue with myself, and I don't do anything insofar as the core responsibilities at work is concerned, then that is not correct, sir, and I need to correct it, because that is exactly what I do. My style is to share with colleagues, share my ideas, because the vantage point of the governance coordinator allows me to do that. So thank you for allowing me to correct that.
Fundis.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, Mr. Mock.
Good afternoon.
There is a view, real or perceived, about the mistrust in the criminal justice system. And you have proposed up to, in order to address some of the perceptions out there through a media campaign, and you have mentioned, taking out ads and also maybe with the newspapers. But if in the event that you're elected, would there be a media strategy that would not only be a media strategy, but an engagement strategy that will bring in all sectors of society and across the country for people to understand, the work that's being done? Because media, a paper, you read it today, tomorrow it's forgotten, but engagement with people and then do that. But it must be underpinned by real work being done and work that people can trust. And what would your strategy be on that? That's the first question, Minister. And the last one, very shortly. You on the issue about safe houses and witness program. We know that for a number, not only in your province but also in other provinces, when we do go or do we take people into a witness program, somehow information is leaked because of the issues relating to that, whether it's corruption or whether it's cahooting or whatever, and so on. What would you bring to ensure that the witness program is solid and people can trust it, and people will be able to be protected, and so that you can then have your solid evidence and so on, in order to have a solid case and a solid prosecution?
Thank you, Vanderson. If I can start with the engagement, yes, certainly. The fact that I spoke about communications does not mean that I do not think that is important. In fact, that's critical, that the NPA has that kind of dialogue with civil society, with stakeholders, with communities. And you're right, it's not talking for talking's sake. It must be on the back of some clear deliverables. And I think that is an absolute necessity. I know that we have started doing that as an organization, maybe not as extensively as people would want, maybe not as broad in terms of the engagement, but certainly my idea would be for that to happen. But as I say, on the basis of what has transpired. So it's not just communicating a positive message of we intend to do the following, but also to demonstrate that we have done the following. So certainly, maybe I didn't expand sufficiently on communication, but you cannot just communicate, sit at VGM or sit anywhere and issue press releases. You've got to have that face-to-face engagement with communities, because that is also where you get a sense of the real perception that people have of the work that you do. And a lot of that engagement actually is advocacy work as well. You'll know, Reverend Sin, there are lots of imbizos in the Western Cape. And at each imbizo, we have to explain bail. And so you can't tire of that responsibility. You've got to explain to our people how the system works. And it's critical that we do that and that we continue doing that. So certainly that is part of it. Insofar as witness protection is concerned, it's a responsibility which is currently located with the NPA. And I must say, if we have regard to witness protection, I'm happy to say that over the last several years, no witnesses have been harmed. I know we went through a bad patch a while back, so things are looking good. It's more about, the point I was trying to make, it's more about that our people understand that witness protection is available to them and that it will meet with whatever the requirements are. And so the reluctance that I sense is the question of location. So you get taken from Lavender Hill or Site C, and you're taken to Mpumalanga or to Limpopo and Northwest, and I think our people battle with that adjustment. But to the point in terms of what we can offer, I think we have a solid system insofar as what the current offering is, because the point I'm making is that the individuals at witness protection are limited by what the current service offering is. And it's the service offering, I think, where we need to have a discussion about what more can we do to try and be, to have a program that is, and I don't want to use the word enticing, because enticing means that, there's something for me to be had at witness protection, and therefore I avail myself. So it's not a question of that. It's real witnesses who can add value to cases and to see how do we address the concerns that they have so that they're able to be absorbed into the program. Leaks, it is so that a common refrain is that when individuals say they've reported a matter to the police, everybody hears about it a few minutes later. And so that's where the need for ethical leadership across the board comes in, so that we also have consequence management when those kinds of things happen.
Advocate.
Thanks, Minister. I'll just be brief. I think to a large extent we have actually focused on the NPA in relation to the society of South Africa. But one of the things that has come out both at the Madlanga Commission and ad hoc committee was just the internal turmoil, for a lack of a better phrase, that is inside. Can you take us through some of the key issues in terms of that turmoil? And I'm using that word deliberately because I don't want you to shift away from it. We know there are challenges inside. So if you could tell us about what those challenges are, and if you were to come in, how you would deal with them. Thanks.
Just clarify, Advocate Sipenya Makhale, are you referring to the turmoil within SAPS or within the criminal justice system in its entirety?
No, NPA.
At NPA?
Yes.
So I'm intrigued by your characterization of it as turmoil, and I interpret you to be referring to the question of IDAC having effected the arrest, an arrest of a senior police officer.
No, it's everything including that. Let me remind you that the current incumbent, when he went to the Madlanga Commission, actually, was it Madlanga or ad hoc?
Ad hoc committee.
Ad hoc committee actually said she underestimated the I don't know what to say, but the challenges internally. And why I'm raising it with you, you've been there for close to 30 years or something like that, and I'm not hearing you mention them, and I'm wondering, is it not because of this glossing over the cracks that makes the cracks to deepen, the water to seep further, and then it becomes a culture of the organization. That's why the limited impact. So tell us what those cracks are, if any, and how, if you were to be appointed, you are going to deal with them. NPA cracks. Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. So, Advocate Batoe has said a number of things. She spoke about underestimating the challenge, and she hasn't always articulated what she means by that. You'll recall when she started off, she was very negative about the state of the organization. And in the recent past, she's tried to walk back some of those comments. When Advocate Batoe was appointed, and I'll mention two things which I'm on record as saying within the organization. When she was appointed, we were convened as the senior management, and the panel can confirm this with her and with others who were there. When the senior management convened, she called us all in to speak about her leadership. I raised with her the issue of the perceptions of the NPA being captured in a public forum. Got up in the plenary and I raised that with her. I said, there's this perception of what has transpired in the organization. Some of us have observed things, but we don't know the context, and so we cannot make definitive findings ourselves.
Chair, can I intervene? I would like you to go to your views about the current situation. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. And I said it's critically important that when you build a team, because she's coming from outside, she's had a view of us, those in the organization. If you want to build a team, then we must know who did what. So that people are afforded an opportunity to explain their conduct, and maybe they are able to give us rational explanations for what they have done. But at the perception level, we may be thinking, there are a few individuals. In my own view, I always thought there's 6 or 8 people who did things wrong in the organization at a distance, not the entire organization. And if people spoke about the NPA being captured, in my view, I thought there were 6, 7, or 8 people who had to account for what they did. I raised that at the very first meeting with Advocate Batoe, and I said it's important for us to go through that process because we need to have that process so that we can build a team once that is done. So let us know who did what, let them explain themselves, then we can build a team and we can move together as a collective. At the SMS conference I spoke about earlier, the one that we concluded, I think it was October, I again got up in the plenary and I said, the one thing we haven't done as an organization is we haven't amongst ourselves spoken about what state capture was and how it manifested in the organization. And I lamented that fact. And I said that it's a critical step that we have missed as an organization because there's a very strong perception that the entire NPA was corrupt. There are many of us who feel, like I do, there were a few individuals, and I'm not saying definitively they were part of state capture, I'm saying that they needed to explain their conduct so that we could all understand what happened. And so that didn't happen. And I think that was a missed opportunity. Because now, as you say, ma'am, we are still being characterized as being in turmoil. And this is how many years after the fact. And so if I become the NDPP, that is something that I would want us to do as an organization, to have an honest discussion amongst ourselves and say, what exactly is this, the turmoil that we speak about? Advocate Batoe spoke about, initially she spoke in the media about, she's concerned about the elements who do not respect the rule of law in the organization. I was alarmed by that statement. It bothered me. When she was asked to explain that, she referenced one instance. And there again, it is critical for us to have a proper understanding to diagnose the problem properly. Are we talking about 1 or 2 individuals who are anti-constitutionalists, who are anti-rule of law? Or are we talking about an organization where this beset by this? My view is that we are not an organization beset by people who are opposed to the rule of law. We are not beset by people who are anti-constitutionalists. That is my view. And so I would want to interrogate the assertions and the evidence that people who make that statement. Because once again, good people are being tarnished by by referencing the entire organization when we may actually only be talking about individuals. Because if it is an individual or at an individual level, it is easier to deal with. If it is beset the organization, of course, then it is much more fundamental. And that is not my view, that we are an organization beset by those kinds of elements.
Thank you. Thank you, Advocate Mop. Just to stick with this for a moment, is it then your assertion that the gap between where the NPA is and where it should be in the minds of the public, for it to be trusted, right? For it to be trusted, the gap between it, where it is in reality, and where the public sees it, is attributable to mere perception? If you look at the matters around skill, matters around ethics, matters around actual performance on the mandate, I just want to be clear, is that what we should understand from in terms of how you see things?
Certainly not. I would be the first to say it's not only at a perception level, because there have been very real failures. And so it cannot be just a perception. And when I talk about that, I always try and distinguish between the cases that are high profile and those that happen in the ordinary course. And so in this context, we're talking about the high profile failures of the organization. And so there have been demonstrable failures. And in some of those, we, once again, from a distance, you have a sense that something has gone wrong. We've asked questions. We know that there are investigations that are happening. We have not been favored with the outcome of those investigations. And because that would be a critical element of firstly, the diagnosis, and also then what needs to be done. Because once again, it is critically important, to be fair to all concerned, that the individuals in those instances are able to explain, account for their conduct, and then on the basis of definitive findings, we are able to act. So to crisply answer, no, it is not just perception. There have been real instances, but we need to understand what happened there so that we are able to remedy that and so that it doesn't repeat itself.
So if you are appointed as NDPP, your first order of business would be to do that diagnostic on those things?
Well, some of it is underway already. There are processes that are unfolding, and maybe I haven't been privy to what the outcomes are, but certainly I would want to know for myself to get a sense of what exactly transpired in these instances. Because I think we've all acknowledged that some of it has done real harm to us as an organization, and we need to understand what happened there.
Maybe also linked to that, earlier on you talked about independence and you referred to it in the context of independence on decision making. Mm-hmm. Maybe if you could just take us through your own thinking about what would make for optimal independence by the NPA and what would that look like? Yeah. And perhaps how would you get there given where you are now?
So I know it's a very topical point, the question of independence, civil society, NGOs. There are a range of actors who've spoken about an independent NPA, one that is not a program of the DOJ. So my understanding is, and the NDPP has communicated this to us, that the minister supports that particular initiative. The president supports it. And so my understanding is that the minister is seized with that process at the moment. If the minister were to request me to share some views for us to look at developing models, to assist the minister arrive at a decision, I would certainly be welcome to do that. But the one critical area, if I can just touch on in terms of what in my view, how it manifests as the independence in terms of the NPA having its own accounting officer, I'm very clear in my mind that person is not the NDPP. I would not support a position that dictates or that suggests that the NDPP is the accounting officer. I'm opposed to that model. I do not think the design of the NPA is of such a nature that the NDPP must have that responsibility. I'll be more amenable to exploring the option like the OCJ has, where we have the SG who manages the administration, and the Chief Justice who provides leadership to the entire country. That is a model that I favor. But of course, once again, at the request of the minister, because it's the minister who drives that process. I think the NDPP is on record to saying that it's something that it's an aspirational goal, but it is located with the minister, and the minister is, as I understand, driving that process.
Sorry, so this is limited specifically to matters around accounting officer, or are there other aspects? I'm just keen to understand your aspirations on the qualitative aspects of what you mean by independence.
So it's squarely within the realm of decision making, prosecutorial decision making. That is the responsibility of the NDPP. It's a constitutional mandate, and that is what we must protect. And so that is the domain of the NDPP, and that is the one that I'm availing myself to play that role.
Prof, a follow-up on that.
I just want to check, given all what has been asked, if you can identify a particular intervention where Advocate Mop initiated, conceptualized, championed, and implemented in face of all these challenges, not the one that the national office or the provincial director did, something that you initiated and saw through.
In terms of, just to clarify, Professor, just broadly speaking, or a crime type, or just an initiative?
An initiative that impacted and changed some of the challenges that we're facing within the NPA, that was initiated by you, conceptualized, you championed it, and you saw it through to the completion.
Off the cuff, I have difficulty for one that I would be able to take through the entire value chain. I've been involved in conceptualizing a number of initiatives, whether it's at the structural level in terms of defining the role of a particular committee or championing particular causes. But where I'm located, it is one where I can conceptualize and delivery happens elsewhere. So there's no one that I can say I've taken from point A to point B, just off the cuff, Professor Fikeni. I wouldn't want to take credit for other people's work. But certainly that is the role. So my role is not one that takes it from A to Z. It is playing a role at a conceptual level and then at an oversight level. So that's why I'm constrained to try and give you something specific.
Yeah, they were doing follow-up. I'm concluding my section of performance. And this part, I want to conclude it about the cases that you dealt with. You were the lead investigator in the Shirin Diwan case, where state was criticized for basing its case on one person and not being able to pull sufficient evidence. The second area, where you were a lead person, it was when you were in the DSO, and as well here, you are said to have met and communicated with the complainant in the 32 million tender rigging scandal. In terms of that, it was also one of those. And the last one, in terms of being part of the review panel, that relates to the SARS ROC unit, that eventually the cases were withdrawn. And the state took public beating of it because it was felt that prosecutorial team was timid and was scared to go for powerful people. Are you able to reflect on that performance as an individual?
I'll do that, Minister. Just to clarify, the 32 million tender, I'm not familiar.
This is the way you are saying it's the tender rigging in terms of the parliament scandal. Here there was a report that we have been communicated with one of the complainants. It was again publicly reported. Okay, let's deal with the other two.
I'll do the other two. I'm trying to reflect on that, Minister. So on Diwani, so Diwani was a series of events. You're correct, Minister. I was involved with the police putting the case together.
Not the lead prosecutor.
I was the lead prosecutor, yes, Minister. So, but there were several prosecutions. Huh? I was the lead prosecutor. That's correct. I was the lead prosecutor. I was, yeah. My colleague, I was the senior prosecutor, and we didn't base our case on one witness, Minister. So, just for context, so we had the first individual that was convicted who pleaded guilty, Zola Tonga. He was the taxi driver who picked the couple up from the airport, and he was the one who was the interface with Mr. Diwani. So to that extent, he was a single witness insofar as the interaction between himself and Mr. Diwani was concerned. But then we also had other witnesses, Minister. We had one of the individuals who was in the vehicle, Mziwa Madol Kawabe. He eventually, when confronted with the evidence, pleaded guilty. We had one 204 witness, Mr. Malombo, and then we had Mr. Mgeni. He went on trial and he got life in prison. So the evidence, insofar as Mr. Diwani and the interactions between him and Mr. Tonga, of course, there was a single witness. But if one had regard to the evidence holistically, Minister, one was able to construct that insofar as the events as they unfolded, there was corroboration for the explanation that Mr. Tongo gave. An important part of the evidence there, Minister, was when. So the couple stayed at a very luxurious place. They decided to go and have supper at a restaurant that not even I would take my wife to on a Saturday evening. No reflection on the restaurant, but these are wealthy people. And on the way to the restaurant, and our thesis was the reason why they had to go to a restaurant in the Strand was because that the plan was to take the vehicle into Guguletu, and for the murder to happen there. And so we have a situation where, and I'm explaining the evidence so I can come back to the criticisms, Minister. We have a situation where on the way to the Strand, the vehicle goes into Guguletu, and supposedly it's to go and see the nightlife in Guguletu, and to see Mzoli's and what township life is like. But in real terms, as part of our case, in real terms, what must happen is that the assailants have predetermined where they're going to meet with Mr. Tongo at an agreed point between NY, I forget exactly which NY and which NY, but that was the agreement. So what happens in practice? They set off, they go into Guguletu, but the assassins are not in place. They couldn't get transport. Huh? So by the time they get to Guguletu, now nothing has happened, and so now they have got to go to the Strand. They don't spend much time in the Strand. Tonga's version is that Mr. Diwani is badgering him, but this was supposed to happen, do something. So the
Advocate Mob, we might not have the luxury of time to listen to the whole.
Okay.
The issue I'm raising, you are the lead prosecutor, this femicide. And the criticism is that because the case was thrown out of court for insufficient evidence.
Yeah. So
that's why I'm linking it, hence I said it's about performance.
Yeah.
Now I moved from the performance of the institution in the Western Cape, and I've moved to your performance.
Okay. Let me deal with it more crisply then, Minister. So the judge felt that she could not rely on our witnesses. Huh? And when I was interviewed about this by the media afterwards, I said in my view, a different judge would have viewed things differently. One of the mental blocks, and I say this with respect, that the judge had was that she could not accept that one of the witnesses himself was not a criminal because he knew criminals. Now, if you've grown up in the township, and if you know township life, you know you can be on the straight and narrow, but you know where to get dacha, you know where to get mandrax, you know who the guys are breaking into houses, you know who steals cars, you know all of those things, but it doesn't make you a criminal. And so at the level of analyzing and evaluating the witnesses, the judge was unable to distinguish between law-abiding citizens who are coming to offer. Of course, they were part of the conspiracy, no doubt about it. But it doesn't mean that because they were part of the conspiracy, you can disrupt all of the evidence. So that's the one witness, the 204. She didn't believe him because he happened to know criminals. Mr. Kwabe, when he testified against Mr. Mgeni, was a very good witness. The morning before I was meant to lead his evidence, he confronted me through his lawyer that he wanted a reduction in his sentence for him to testify. We had entered into the plea and sentence agreement with him. He got 25 years, but as part of the stipulation was that he has to serve 2/3 of his sentence before he's eligible for parole. He wanted that to be removed from the 105. And so the quality of his evidence, Mr. Kwabe, compared to the person that I led against Mr. Mgeni, he was a very different person because he wanted to extract something from me. And of course, we cannot compromise, Minister. Firstly, it's not permissible for me to do that. And I disclosed that to the defense. I had to disclose to the defense that this witness has now tried, on the morning of me leading his evidence, tried to engineer a deal with me for his evidence. So that was another important witness. Even the family of the deceased were shocked at his evidence.
So it's not necessarily that the judge didn't believe him. Because when you started, you almost gave that it was the fault of the judge. That didn't, you say the judge seemed to have had a mental block. But as you explain, I don't know what word you use, almost like mental blackout. But as you explain, there was a problem with the witnesses, as the judge has made the decision.
So, Minister, I was referring to a particular witness. I referred to the 204. The 204, that's the context in which I made that point. So Mr. Kwabe was not as good as he was in Mr. Mgeni's trial, but Minister, I would not, on the basis of his evidence, despite that, have dismissed his evidence outright. Zola Tongo, once again, gave his evidence years after the fact, may have made some errors, but in the main, I felt there was a sufficient basis for the accused to be placed on his defense. The judge had a different view, and she exercised the discretion. So it is not a question of basing it on one individual. And certainly, Minister, I've asserted this before, I do not think that me leading the prosecution is what resulted in that outcome. Not my capability, not my ability, not the way we presented the evidence. If I can go to...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit confused, Advocate Moore, because a 204 witness is an insider. Mm-hmm. It cannot be someone who is in the community who knows criminals. Mm-hmm. The 204 is an insider who now is going to give the prosecution critical information so that they secure conviction in return for them being exonerated or getting a lighter sentence. I just wanted to clarify that, because the way you put it, it was almost like it's this community member who, as a result of being a community member, may have come across the information and wanted to help. No, a 204 is usually one off. I just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you very much for that. I mean, I try to restrain myself with giving too much of the facts, but I mean, thank you for the opportunity. So the context of this particular individual was that he worked he was a receptionist at the hotel. Mr. Tongo used to ferry passengers there. So how he became involved, Mr. Tongo asked him if he knew of anyone in the township who could do something. People who had access to firearms, and because he had met Mr. Kwabe at Mumabisi Beach on one occasion, and Mr. Kwabe had bragged about what is involved, and he thought of him immediately. So that was the context. Then, of course, he became involved in the. So his role was he was the intermediary, communicating. Mr. Tongo would communicate with him. He would communicate with the assailants, and as much as I said to him that he was the project manager, in his own mind, of course, you know, the individuals sometimes try and downplay their role. But that was his role. So he was an upright citizen, but knew people, and that is how he became the 204, because he was the intermediary between Mr. Tongo and the two eventual hitmen.
Mr. Mutlu?
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Mop, what I want to establish from you is when this 174, Section 174 discharge was granted, the judge made a remark with regards to lack of corroboration between the three witnesses. And that talked to the issue of credibility. And me and you understand that there is case law with regards to how credibility will impact an application of that nature. It will be in cases where the evidence is so dilapidated that the credibility of evidence presented is so poor that it cannot be relied on. Now, for the court to arrive at that, the prosecution ought to have foreseen at a very minimum in terms of evaluating prospects of success, looking into the merit of the matter. You should have been in a position at that stage to make that call and determination and make a decision whether or not to still pursue prosecution. Don't you think that failure to make such consideration is in an indictment on you, a direct indictment on you, in terms of poor judgment in handling this matter?
No, thank you for the opportunity. And no, I do not think it reflects on me, sir. We did exactly that. We knew it was a high-profile matter. We had spent years trying to get the gentleman here with the assistance of the British authorities. So it was certainly not a question of us not having done a proper evaluation of the case. We did exactly that. And that is why I say the judge exercised her discretion to say she was of the view that the evidence was of such poor nature that it shouldn't be placed on his defense. And we had a different view, but she exercised the discretion. So it's certainly not a question of us having done that. The person who prosecuted the case with me is herself a very accomplished and seasoned prosecutor. She heads up the organized crime division in the Western Cape. So certainly, we were not wrong to prosecute.
Just a follow up on it, Minister. Surely there were other avenues at your disposal. There was a legal remedy or recourse at your disposal in the event that you were of the view that the court erred in its findings. There could have been an avenue that you should have explored, which you failed to do, which would be to appeal that decision.
Yeah. So you're right when you say we didn't explore it. It doesn't mean we didn't consider it, sir. We did consider it, and whether we should get to the point of filing the appeal. And after our analysis, we concluded no, we shouldn't do that.
Thank you.
Move on to the next one.
Sorry, Minister.
The SARS unit officials.
SARS, yes. So, Minister, I'm not sure. My role, I was on the review panel, myself and two senior colleagues. The leader of the team was a DPP, together with another senior deputy. And we reviewed the evidence. And our conclusion was correct, Minister. It's not a question of being timid. Huh? In the main, I drafted that report based on the work that we did, and of course my colleagues contributed, and eventually the leader of the team settled the document. But that is one of those instances where I also thought the people involved here should explain themselves, because, Minister, that docket was several lever arch files, and it was clear. You read the affidavits, you read the investigating diary, and the investigation is going towards Polokwane. Then all of a sudden, you see, no write-up in the investigating diary, but the investigation pivots. All of a sudden, these three individuals become the focus, and that is pursued eventually. And the memorandum which was prepared to get the concurrence of the DPP in North Gauteng was not an accurate reflection of the quality of the evidence. So I take exception to anyone who says that I am timid to prosecute. I reviewed the documentation. We wrote up a detailed report for the NDPP to consider, and it was clear there was no basis for that prosecution. And I lament the fact that the colleagues who took the decision have not explained themselves so that we can engage and understand how could you arrive at the decision, because from what we read as that review team, there was no case.
Does that mean, I'm going to take you back as I conclude and give over to my team, to the panel. Is that having any, because this I picked up from the media. So this has been an analysis by the media. Is it one of the areas that has influenced? Because earlier on when you spoke about the media, it was quite interesting. I think Prof followed up on your views about how the media reports. Is this one of the areas that has led you to have that perception?
Certainly, Minister. I mean, if the accusation is that we are timid to prosecute based on a recommendation not to prosecute particular individuals, then yes, because those individuals do not know what the substance of the docket is. It is the docket, the facts in the docket, and the law that governs decision making. If you don't look at I always say, when you go through your process, it's the law and the facts, and that decision may have consequences. Your manager manages those consequences. You don't look at the consequences and take a step back then and reconsider. So yes, I mean, if it's different if it's informed criticism. That's why I said if one could engage with the colleagues who made the decision, then you would have a better understanding of what led them to that position. Minister, we didn't deal with the 32 million tender. I'm still not familiar with that matter. A tender at Parliament that I met with a complainant.
Yes. It was reported to you. I want to open it. You were head of the DSO. Oh, sorry. You were head of the DSO. And then one of the issues that led to, it's a parliament, and I want to get the full name of the company that was involved in the 32 million tender. But the complaint was that at that time that members of the DSO had communicated, but it was during the transition where it was being disestablished. I don't know if you remember that. So the concerns was about not being able to deal with the matter, referring it because the DSO was being disestablished and therefore didn't have to.
I have some vague recollection of that, Minister. But if I say that it would have been in the context that we had no legal authority anymore to do anything, and that because once the DSO was being dissolved, because part of that process I spoke about earlier was not only about personnel, but it was also about case transition, taking cases from the DSO, moving it across to the police. So if I say that it would have been in the context that I no longer have legal authority to do anything, and that it now has to go to the police. Huh?
Okay. No, the context I was coming to was your analysis around the media perception, how you've been reflected even in the media, whether it informs feeling that it has been negative towards you.
Well, not to me, Minister. I mean, I take criticism, and where criticism is warranted, I'm the first to put up my hand and say, I've erred here. But when it is unfounded, then I have to at least try and set the record straight. And so to the extent that the allegation is, or the assertion is that I couldn't assist the complainant, it could only have been in the context that I no longer had legal authority to do anything, and that the authority now vested in the police, and that the police would have been the appropriate vehicle to deal with that matter. Because, Minister, just to emphasize that point, so prosecutions remain in the prosecution. So if a matter had matured to the level of a prosecution, obviously that was retained. Like J. Arthur Brown is one of those where the prosecutor dealing with that matter transitioned into the DPP office and continued dealing with the case. But investigations, of course, the NPA no longer had investigative power. And that was in the police then.
Let me ask Mfundisi. We'll start with you now. Okay. Mafundlela?
Thanks, Commissioner. To the extent that you may have been in the prosecution space for this longest time, Advocate Mop, I just want to get your sense. If anybody or society is having all this outcry about possible political interferences in your space, and I call it that's your space because you have been there for this 33 years, what would be your immediate answer? Would you agree or to disagree?
I would disagree. And speaking for myself, I've always said I'll be happy to go to a court of law to testify that no one has ever tried to influence any decision that I've had to make. I'd be comfortable doing that. And I would like to believe that all of my colleagues would be able to do that. Of course, there have been contexts where the allegations have been made, and those are, once again, it's a handful of cases. But because they are prominent cases, the narrative then becomes that you are captured. I went to the deputy minister at an event somewhere at Alliance Francaise. I even forget what the topic was about, a member of the public just passed and said, because I was introduced as an NPA member, I wasn't in the DS, I was in the NPA. Oh, the NPA is captured. Huh? And I thought, okay, no, so do you have the engagement? I mean, it was just a little passing comment. And so I take to heart. Huh? And despite that, I am never embarrassed to say I work for the National Prosecuting Authority because of the good work that colleagues do. I recognize that there have been mistakes. I recognize there are question marks in some instances, and I too also want answers on some of those. Some colleagues have started saying they work for the National Ports Authority, and it's a sad day if you have to place yourself under Transnet to get away from the NPA. So yeah, it's I would like to think that my colleagues can all offer the same that I'm offering to say. I'm confident I can testify that it doesn't happen to me, and that they were able to do the same. And I'm not including the 6 or 8 that I say there are question marks about their conduct, and that must all be accounted for and explained.
So if elevated to the NDPP, that would be your approach to things. You'd be able to say, in all these peculiar cases in which we may be perceived to be politically influenced in taking these decisions, your approach would first be, let's then clean our house, review these matters and see if perhaps there is logic, any credence to the criticism.
Certainly, and not necessarily on the basis just of speculation in the media. But where even within the organization, people have said, okay, we don't know the facts here, but we would like to understand what transpired here. It's important, and that's part of that process. And the process I was talking about is not a cathartic process to say, let us know who did what in the organization. It's not that. It's for that very reason, so that we know who did what. People can be held accountable, and conversely, people are afforded an opportunity to state their case. And they may very well convince us that their conduct was rational and lawful, because that is required for us to build the team. If you still have doubts about, I'm not so sure about this, it's not healthy. And it feeds into this narrative, that there are problems in the organization. So it may be cathartic, but that's what I'm saying. It's not, the objective is not to have a cathartic experience. It's fact-finding, making determinations, and remedying where remedy is required. And where people have been vindicated, also communicate that we've investigated, we've interrogated, and in fact people have given rational explanations, and that their conduct was lawful, so that we build that team I'm talking about.
Thanks, Minister Mda.
Prof,
Can I write on that question, because I think we've been skirting around it? What's your threshold to say an organization is either captured or has internal problems? Should it be a majority of cases, given the sensitivity of the sector? Imagine if 1 or 2 judges were found to have been compromised, the perception out there. It doesn't have to be a majority. Even when we talk of the state capture, you don't have to say we have 30-something departments. Only 5 departments have a problem. What's your threshold? Because I'm struggling with this notion that no, it's a few cases there. And yet some sectors, it could just be few sectors, and the perception, given the scale, the scope, and the impact they have on society, it become that generalized perception.
So to answer the question crisply, the threshold is 0. And so that's why I'm lamenting the fact that we haven't had a process where we can demonstrate and account for those particular cases. And so that is why it festers and lingers. Because there's no communication, there's no determination, a definitive statement to say, but this has been an issue in the organization, we've interrogated it, we've lanced the boil, this is what we found, and communicate. So when I say 0, in other words, we cannot afford to have even a single instance of a perception of being captured. So that's the 0 threshold I speak about. It is untenable to even have that mentioned in the same context of the NPA. So any instance of that nature must be addressed and dealt with.
Let me come on that one again. We know for a fact that there has been attempts, sometimes successful, of political influence on the NPA. And as such, you've lived long enough in that organization and you have not made a very clear categorical statement in your assessment of those moments. You say, no, it might just be a few individuals here and there. And yet, in society, they know for a fact that there has always been this pressure, and as such, no other NPA director has lasted and finished their term.
So just for context, so the one that we know definitively is Mr. Piccoli, because that was ventilated. He was able to demonstrate an attempt to influence his decision-making. So that's been ventilated, and that's why we can say categorically that that is a firm instance where there was an attempt by an executive member to interfere in prosecutorial decision-making. So that one is clear. The others I speak about, Professor Fikeni, is where we don't have that clarity, and that is I'm saying, that's why I lament the fact that we don't have that clarity. Because for us to make definitive statements like we can in the context of Mr. Piccoli, we need to have the facts. And from where I'm sitting, I don't have the facts, and I don't think that society has the facts. And even within the organization, maybe there are a few who have perceptions, but we don't have all the facts. And that is the opportunity that I lament that we've missed, for us to be able to get to grips with what exactly transpired. And as I say, it may be at the perception level where even I think, but this conduct, I would like it to be explained, and that someone may be able to offer an explanation. And so that's the opportunity that I.
So to you, only Piccoli case out of the many successive cases, you would say definitively, this is the case of political influence, whether successful or not.
So I'm very clear to draw a distinction between that one where it was definitive and where there are allegations of interference. And that one, the point I'm making is that one, the interference was demonstrated. In the others, we have not seen a clear demonstration of that influence. There may be very strong views, there may be very strong perceptions, but that does not carry the day. Can I maybe just by drawing an analogy? The other day, I heard a comment, and this is a matter that I was involved in. The comment was, in that particular case, the police believed that the accused was guilty. Now, I was involved in that case. And it may very well that the police believed that the accused was guilty. But there was no evidence to suggest the accused was guilty. And so that's the distinction I draw between having the perception and having a factual basis to make a statement like that.
You're covered. You are covered. Okay, you come on that side.
Thanks, Minister. There's one aspect that I wanted to probe you on. What is your understanding of transformative constitutionalism within the ambit and context of prosecutorial function? And as you attempt to respond to this question, please cover the aspect of your role as NDPP in operationalizing it.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I must say I haven't really reflected on that in that context, because normally I would look at the transformative agenda within the Constitution is to try and look at society broadly and how we seek and how we achieve redress more broadly. So the NPA is unique in the sense that it is not a typical government department, and I say that not in a pejorative sense, but with respect, because it's a unique function that the NPA plays. And so without having given it too much thought, off the cuff, I would say to you, sir, that there is limited scope for the NDPP to play a transformative role in terms of the broad context of society, because you are charged with the responsibility of making decisions without fear, favor, and prejudice within the context and the confines of the criminal law. So in terms of playing that role as a decision maker, I say it is a limited role. Where there is scope for the NDPP to play a more broader role in terms of a more transformative role is in the prosecution, broadly speaking. The composition of the prosecution, there you have greater scope to ensure that the transformation agenda that government broadly seeks to achieve, that you're able to participate in that, to give effect to it, and to ensure that the NPA is a transformed organization. Not decision-making, but in terms of how you conduct yourself. In other words, are we really able to, as an organization, to say that Batupile means Batupile? Are we living that expression as an ideal, as an organization? Are we treating our people with respect and with dignity? So that is where I see, in that broad rubric of a broader responsibility of the NDPP and the role that the individual must play, that is where I see that transformative role manifesting. I would be reluctant at this stage to say that it is within the context of decision making, because unlike the judiciary has a role to play there in terms of how they interpret the particular statutes to give effect to the transformative aspirations of legislation. We are not in that position. We're dealing with criminal law. I always like to say it's right and it's wrong, it's black and it's white. My wife is a psychologist, and she says there's a massive gray area that I overlook, but it's the law and the facts and decision making. There's no role for a transformative agenda in terms of decision making on a case basis. But taking a step back and looking at your role more broadly speaking within the organization, certainly there's scope for you to play a role and to execute a transformative agenda in the organization.
Thank you very much. I think we'll go to Mr. Mavundlela on the public comments. It's your part as we conclude the...
Thanks very much, Minister. Advocate Mob, it's interesting to me, and I believe to everybody who would have then realized that members of the public who commented on your their perceived suitability were only 5. I'm not sure whether it's because you're not very well known, or because you do a lot of good things.
I'd like to think it's the latter, sir.
or whether you you are those kind of people who does their work and just walk away and never look for accolades. But whichever way that it comes about, be pleased to know that none of them is actually objecting to your possible elevation should the president feel that you are a capable candidate to be put in that position. So I just thought I should let you know of that, because I know that the panel would not pick up anything on public comments that are either negative on your name. So you can rest assured that as you try to do your work harder every day, the public is watching you differently.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister.
Maybe you missed this one. There was somebody who actually commented that you were too junior.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
I noticed that, Minister, and I hope you read my response, Minister. Huh? Because I think, and I say this with respect to the individual who made that comment, the person focused only on my rank. The person didn't look at my experience in the organization, the different roles that I've played, that although I've been based in the Western Cape, I've played leadership roles at a national level, and that my experience broadly, and my submission to the panel was reflect my experience broadly in the organization, what I've done, and then measure me on my interview here today as well, and not focus on title or the position. As I said, I've always seen myself as a national leader, and I engage as a national leader. In as much as I don't let the title restrain me in terms of my engagement, I don't let the title dictate or assert authority. It's more about influence. And I think I offer that within the organization.
The other one, I think Mavundila went through. The other one is on the lifestyle audit, which I think you did. But the person says you are since compromised, and I think you responded.
Yeah.
Can you call that?
Minister, that individual, I mean, I hope you read it, and I must apologize, but some of these things you've got to put in context. Yeah? The allegations that were made against me that I was trying to favor a friend who in fact had no real authority, and that is why I took the trouble to demonstrate to the panel the process that one follows, my interventions, how my interventions came about.
Oh, this is in relation to Mr. Dana.
To Mr. Dana, yes, because that's the same individual that says I'm compromised. It's in that context. And hopefully the panel will appreciate the detailed response I gave to demonstrate that it's not true at all.
Please explain publicly, because this process, as others say, it's a public process.
Certainly, Minister.
We don't want to make evaluations secretly.
Certainly. So a member of the public wrote to the panel indicating that I'm a compromised individual, that some time ago I protected an individual that is a friend of mine that I used to work with, and that I withdrew a Section 252 authorization, and goes on to list a number of allegations about impropriety on my part insofar as the Section 252 is concerned. So for the benefit of the public, Section 252 is a provision in the Criminal Procedure Act that authorizes a Director of Public Prosecutions to authorize conduct by the police, not be called traps and undercover operations. So there are certain thresholds that the police require the authority of a Director of Public Prosecutions to conduct those activities. And in the Western Cape, that is one of my responsibilities. And so there's a process where the police, in writing, submit their application. I consider the application. If I have concerns, I write back to the coordinator, who is the interface in the police, with the applicant. We try and resolve it on paper. If not, I meet in person with them to explain my concerns or seek greater clarity. So in this particular instance, this was what they call an intelligence operation. In other words, the outcome of the investigation would not be a prosecution. It would allow the police to broaden their information with a view to then subsequently conducting what we call court-driven operations, where the objective of the operation is to secure an arrest and a prosecution. So this was what we call an intelligence operation. So members of the South African Police Service who were based in the crime intelligence wrote, and they wanted to conduct I don't want to use legal technical terms, but it's in the parlance it's a reverse thing. In other words, so they were going to provide the contraband to an individual. And so the objective here was to infiltrate a group of Chinese nationals who were operating in the illegal abalone space. And the idea was to obtain abalone and transfer this to China, to these individuals. And normally, Minister, when this happens, the resource is normally held by the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, DAF, as the custodian of the state resource. And so they play a critical role in empowering the police to do that. And so normally when there's an operation of that nature, DAF are the ones who make the abalone available. So I had a number of difficulties. I won't go into all the details on the first iteration of the document. And I sent it back with comment. I received the second one. I still wasn't happy. And I then called for a meeting with the operatives. And the proposal had moved to the point where they wanted to now use a legal company to export illegal abalone, on the face of it, illegal abalone. And my fear was that a legitimate company is now going to put illegal abalone through its books. They have to declare the revenue, and there will be tax implications. And so I invited my colleague from the tax unit. We had a discussion with the team, gave them some feedback. They knew I wasn't happy with the application. I reduced my concerns to writing again to the police coordinator. And then I went on leave, my annual leave, and the application came back, and a colleague of mine approved the application. Of course, I was on vacation. So when I returned in January, at some point I received an application from the police, an amendment application. They wanted to change the operatives who were working on the operation. And I authorized that. It was a change in personnel, who was the coordinator, etc. The same day I got a phone call from Mr. Dana. And it's okay if I mention his name, Minister, huh? But he's a former colleague. He worked with me in the DSO. He was a senior state advocate, and he reported to one of my deputies. He called me, asked for an urgent meeting. There were some concerns. So I granted the audience, and an entire team arrived. A brigadier from crime intelligence, together with the colonel. The colonel was the direct commander of the applicants. The brigadier obviously is in charge of the entire component. A brigadier from the DPCI, and then Mr. Dana. And the brigadier and Mr. Dana were the ones who actually led the discussion, and they were explaining to me that there were a number of concerns that they had with the operation, that DAF had asked the police to comply with a number of conditions which the police didn't comply with, and so the brigadier's appeal to me was to withdraw the authorization. So even though I didn't issue the authorization, because it's my portfolio, I am entitled to withdraw the authorization. But I wasn't happy with the verbal briefing, because that's not how you do things. So I said to them, reduce your concerns to writing, and I'll consider your concerns. Of course, on the face of it, the concerns were valid, on the face of it, but these were verbal explanations to me. A few days later, I received a request in writing from the head of crime intelligence, a major general. In other words, the operatives are within that component, the brigadier, the colonel was with the brigadier has spoken to me, and now the general, who's the most senior person in that entire division, writes to me, explains the non-compliance with DAF's requirements, and requests me to withdraw the authorization. So based on the written request, I issued a directive to withdraw the directive. In other words, the directive becomes null and void, and I asked them to reinstate the situation before the authorization was issued. So what that means in practice is now the abalone that the police have, that the operatives have, must be returned to DAF as the custodian. The abalone that's returned to DAF is not the same abalone that went out. It's poor quality, it's more slime than anything I'm told after the fact, and of course there are many concerns. So Mr. Dana, who had spoken to me in the meeting, had also mentioned that he's preparing a report for his Director General on this very issue. And of course, I don't know what transpires between him and his Director General, but the next thing that happens is I receive a letter via the DPP requesting me to assist the DAF investigation into what transpired in this particular instance. So I did that. I prepared an affidavit, much along the lines of my explanation to the panel of the sequence of event and what transpired. And I subsequently testified in 2 disciplinary hearings of DAF members. So the public comment was that, firstly, I tried to protect Mr. Dana. Mr. Dana was one of the targets of the operation. It's just the furthest from the truth. Mr. Dana was, in fact, the person who alerted me to the wrongdoings, ensured that the police were able to write to me to withdraw the authorization, and tried to remedy the wrong. But unfortunately, the damage was done. And you would have seen, Minister, from the documents I presented, that there was disciplinary hearings. There was also a public protector investigation. And so the allegations against me that I favored Mr. Dana is the furthest from the truth. In fact, Mr. Dana should be commended for the role he played here in trying to assist the state.
Thank you. I thought it's important because it's a public comment, so that it's not seen as if we didn't deal with it. The other area I want you to deal with as the last one, because the others, it's more around whether you'll prosecute white people, whether you'll prosecute friends, and I see I don't think there's a basis. But there's this one, which you are saying you don't know anything about, and I want you to go on record on it. The Walker Bay Kenners, part of IJ, exported lobsters illegally.
Yes, Minister, I saw that and I was intrigued. Walker Bay Cannery, part of I&J, as they say, and Glomax was the second company that I mentioned. I actually Googled that to see which companies these were, and it seems these are companies that are based in the Western Cape, in the Hermanus area in particular. And where I saw their names was actually in an official government document that they were two companies were amongst the companies that were getting quotas to harvest legal abalone. But the comment also makes no allegation against me, Minister. It just says it makes those statements in the context of the 252 operation, but it's not relevant to the 252, and so therefore all I could say is I noted, but I don't. No allegation is made against me.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted you to reflect it because, no, it's linked to the 205. So I saw the lobsters as well.
Yeah.
A link to that. I thought, let's clear it. You've never had interaction with this company so that we close.
Maybe as context, Minister, the company that would have been exporting it, I don't recall it being any of those 2 names.
Okay.
Just for the record.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Advocate Mop. I'm happy to announce that we've come to the end. I can see the smile as well. Come to the end of our interaction with you. I want to say thank you very much for availing yourself and coming through and having this conversation with us. And wish you all of the best. Travel misses. I know you delayed your travel. Hope you don't miss that flight. You are able to get onto it.
Minister, I was quite emotional early. So can I take the time now to thank you, firstly, for the indulgence. I know it's an indulgence. I mean, I had no right to request. And on behalf of my family as well. No, I can't miss that flight. I'll be in trouble. So thank you for that indulgence. And also thank you for the engagement today. I appreciate it. I appreciate the tough questions. That's what it's about. Huh? It's not meant to be a walk in the past. And I hope that I've been able to demonstrate, firstly, my ability to engage with critical questions, my ability to offer solutions, because I do believe that I have the ability to lead the organization, to inspire confidence, and to be the next NDPP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Mop. We'll take lunch break for 30 minutes and resume.